Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 7.5. Fumikage Tokiyami watched Izuku Midoriya leap into the air and land on the story above. Whatever quirk he has, it's powerful. He may just be the light to guide us through dark nights. He shook his head and began towards his targets. While they didn't know for certain, they determined that both Mina Ishido and Eijiro Kirishima would stick to the ground level, where their quirks could do the most damage. Izuku stated Katsuki Bakugo would want to fight him one-on-one, and thus would be separate from his companions. That's one case where I won't doubt Midoriya. Nobody knows Bakugo as well as him, but that is the benefit of childhood bonds. He stopped at a crunching sound. A bamboo wall to his left cracked and then burst open as Eijiro's hardened limbs sliced through the dried plant. He grinned, teeth sharpened, and Fumikage bristled. Found the bird, Mina! Eijiro shouted. The wall behind Fumikage sizzled with an off-color white as a pink hand melted it away. A grinning face, complete with dark sclera and yellow horns, gave Mina an alien appearance. Don't take this hard, Tokiyami, Mina said. If we don't take you down, Bakugo says he'll tell everyone we've agreed to be his sidekicks. Load of tosh, I say, being a sidekick. How unfortunate, Fumikage muttered as his two opponents moved to encircle him. I would not wish an embarrassment like that upon either of you, but Midoriya and I won before the match begun. Forgive me for the darkness you shall face. Dark shadow emerged from beneath his black cloak. It screeched, wings spreading to hang over both Eijiro and Mina. They froze at the sight until an explosion rocked the building. Midoriya has engaged Bakugo. Aloud, he said, face my dark wrath. Dark Shadow's wings descended in a furious flap, striking out at the two. Eijiro dove and avoided the attack, while Mina faced it head-on, acid glossy on her hands. The acid stung Fumikage's quirk, but with a flick of its wing, Dark Shadow sent her flying into a far wall. Her collision was hard and she was out cold before hitting the ground. Oh shit, Eijiro said, staring at his ally. Oh shit is correct, Kirishima, Fumikage said as Dark Shadow's acid burns was patched by shadowy threads renewed the area touched. It lashed out, faster and more furious than during its first attack. While Eijiro avoided the left wing's strike, the right wing caught his midsection and tossed him into the same wall Mina had hit. He fell upon her and after a tense couple seconds, neither moved. Another explosion rocked the building as Fumikage wrapped their wrists together with the capture tape they had been given. Finish soon, Midoriya. Hantashiro had been nervous when he saw the names in his group for battle training. He had seen all of them excel during the quirk tests in a way he hadn't. My quirk's pretty cool and versatile, but it's nothing like theirs. Between Tenya's speed, Yuga's laser beam, and Rikiru's sugar-induced strength, he felt physically outmatched. And Yaoyorozu saw through Aizawa-sensei's lie. Only Midoriya seems to be as clever as her, but he has Bakugo breathing down his neck. He shivered before stepping into the small room he had been assigned as a starting place. He knew from the map that he was placed between Yaoyorozu Momo and Sato Rikido. The lights went out and All Might's booming voice shouted, "Start!" Hanta started towards Rikido. All he knew of Momo's quirk was that it was good enough to get her in by recommendation. Thus, taking on what he knew was a much better idea than fighting Mystery Girl. Halfway between their starting places, he stopped and pulled out a length of clear tape. Strip after strip, he covered the narrow passage so that anyone who tried to follow him or stumble upon the path he had taken would get caught by his tape. Luck was on his side, for as he turned a corner to walk away, a loud stumbling noise came right from his tape trap. Sneaking up to the corner, Hanta avoided the large figure that crashed through his tape and stumbled close to his hiding place. The trap shocked his ensnared victim, who then fell over and bound the trap tighter as they struggled. Even with all of this, it was only the low, deep grunt that confirmed his catch. This place has to be a real mess for you to show up. Sorry about this, Sato, Hanta said, lifting a fist. It took a dozen blows to knock out the larger boy and a few awkward minutes to tape him to the wall. At least the tape glows. Let them know that Zero Hanta will be a great hero. Chapter 8. Friday was the first time Class 1A had to face a day that played out like the long, mindless days of their middle school careers. Although the press was camping outside the school after the news that All Might himself was teaching inspiring heroes at his alma mater, the students were prevented from being interrogated by the press due to the intervention of the faculty. Even those students who would gladly discuss the school's newest teacher were prevented from speaking and reprimanded once away from the press's watchful eyes. The day began improper when Aizawa entering their classroom without his now trademark yellow sleeping bag. The class exchanged confused looks and curious whispers as their homeroom teacher walked to his rarely used podium at the front of the classroom. The principal has gotten on my case about something I've forgotten about. As such, we need to select the student council members from Class 1A. He's also decided to expand the positions for all classes from the traditional 2 to 5. Something about a trip to the top schools in the United States. The absence of your class from the first meeting was noted and the other first-year heroic class wasn't allowed to introduce themselves. He shrugged after his last commented and finished with, "We'll start with the class president." Immediately students began to declare why they should be class president, trying to talk over and one-up each other. Izuku sat back, watching Aizawa's growing frustration with the boisterous class. He was tempted to say something when Tenya raised his hand and the class fell quiet, startled by the movement. Leading many is a task of tremendous responsibility. Ambition doesn't equal ability, and this is a role that requires the best of us to perform. It is vital that we trust whomever we select to be our class president. Thus, I propose we hold an election to select our class president. I like your idea, Iida, Asui said. Unfortunately, we've only known each other for a week. That's barely enough time to build up trust, Hiro. Yeah, and everyone'll just vote for themselves, Kirishima added. And if someone gets more than one, would you consider them to be the best candidate? Tenya asked Kirishima. He nodded and the boy with glasses continued. Thus whomever gets the most votes will be best suited. He turned to Aizawa, who watched the class with tired apathy. Will you allow this, sensei? Aizawa nodded. Just make it quick. The class proceeded to tear off small pieces of paper and write down the name of whomever they thought should be class president. Izuku handed his to Tenya as he walked around the class, gathering votes, with only a hint of nervousness. I don't know if anyone else will vote for me, but I hope so. If I'm going to achieve my goals, becoming class president will greatly help me make them a reality. The class was quiet as Tenya worked through each slip, writing names whenever they first appeared and adding marks to their right to count multiples. Soon enough, one name acquired twice as many votes as anyone else, Midoriya Izuku. The students near him patted him on the back. A few stared at him, jealous of his victory, but didn't protest. Katsuki said, "Low for just those, but especially Izuku, near him, how the hell did Deku get so many votes?" "Probably because of how strong he is," Kirishima said. "He took you down, so he's definitely skilled too, and we all remember the HRLT." As Katsuki continued to fume, Izuku went to the front of the room, joined by Momo, the only other student to achieve more than one vote. He noticed how Tenya, who had proposed the election, looked disappointed and that he had been one 7 students to not receive a vote. Even if it was his idea, I don't know why Tenya would assume he'd get a vote. Perhaps he thought that the class would select him because of his idea. I can't blame him, for it was a smart idea. I'll have to listen to the other positions and see if one will be a good match for him. Well, your president is Midoriya and vice president is Yaoyorozu, Aizawa said. If either of you want to say something, go ahead. Just know it'll cut into both your class time. Oh, and give me the names for the other positions before school ends. The president will want to see who you've selected. There's no need for a speech, Izuku said with an abashed grin. We're all here to be heroes, not to polish our egos. Although I am flattered so many supported me, it seemed to be the right thing to say as most of the class nodded or smiled at his words. Yaoyorozu verbally agreed, and they sat down. The morning went by with little of note, beyond present Mike's standard eccentric nature during English. Math had, unlike in previous years, used scenarios related to their future work as heroes instead of weird scenarios involving 17 bananas or 3,000 cans of Pepsi. As with every day, they went to lunch in the massive cafeteria where the Cook Hero Lunch Rush provided whatever culinary delight students could ponder. As one of the few places where the different courses and years interacted, it had been required to be large enough for half of UA's 1,500 students to sit, eat, and talk in comfort. Izuku had found time to watch older students and those from other courses during the past days, but he had different expectations during lunch today. He sat at a table meant for 6 students, yet 8 students ended up crowded around it. At the ends were Momo and Tenya, 2 of the smartest students in their class. Although he had initially wanted both Katsuki and Kirishima to sit with them, they had gone off to sit with Kaminari, Shiro, and Ashido at a nearby circular table. It's nice to see Kachan and Kirishima getting along so well. Kirishima's a good friend and we all know Kachan needs someone who can hold his ground against him without being a serious threat. The other 3 are goofy enough and with a nice range of quirks that nobody will become the focus of his ire. Plus, I haven't heard him threaten to kill someone in several months. Instead, Todoroki, Asui, Fumikage, Ojiro, and Ochako crowed around the table, grabbing a couple unused chairs so they could all fit. The rest of their class occupied the 3 nearest tables, where Jiro, Shoji, and Shiro all sat in the nearest seats. Before we were dismissed to lunch, Aizawa-sensei provided me the positions for the other class officers, Izuku said in a lull in the conversation. The 3 positions needing to be filled are class secretary, representative, and a captain for the sports festival in April. Apparently they're to be the face of our class in all promotional materials. Do you want only our advice on who to select for those roles, or are you just looking to build consensus around your choices? Tenya asked, lowering his chopsticks. Izuku nodded, holding out a single finger as he swallowed, and the bespectacled boy rubbed his chin. Each one has its challenges and requirements. I would suggest asking for volunteers first. While they may not be who you would want personality-wise, they would have the best skill set to be successful, and that is what's most important for your selection. Make Bakugo the sports festival captain, Todoroki said, in between slurps of soba noodles. Izuku wasn't sure he had ever heard so many words come out of the hybrid quirk user's mouth at once. He had noticed how Todoroki reacted when someone mentioned his father, Endeavor, and immediately dropped any thoughts about discussing the boy's famous father. While I would be the logical choice given who my father is, I don't want the attention and pressure that comes with being a poster boy. With me out of the way, he'll jump at the opportunity, especially since he did have the highest score from the entrance exam. He paused, spinning noodles around his chopsticks, and added, though, he may reject the position if you offer it to him in private. I take it you don't support Ida's suggestion, correct? Momo asked. Do you? Ochako asked. Izuku fought a smile. With everything that happened in the practical exam, it was nice to see Tenya and Ochako become friends, and that led to them becoming some of his closer friends among the students in their class. Plus, Izuku would bet that Momo would have the highest scores once midterm exams came around in May. He had met with All Might the evening after battle training and they had talked about his class. His mentor was proud of the effort put in by every student and made sure to find extra to comment on, but had dedicated a good 15 minutes to praise her abilities, especially Yaoyorozu's phenomenal capacity for analysis and deduction. Even after he reverted to his lanky form, Toshinori once again praised her mental abilities and confessed he thought she was the smartest student in his class. There is merit to it, Momo admitted. However, I believe it would be best for Midoriya and I to select them instead of asking for volunteers. You only need to consider how our class selected where to sit for lunch today. They all glanced at the 3 nearest tables around those in position to listen and relay their conversation. Shoji and Jiro both had quirks suited for gathering information via eavesdropping, and Shiro was the calmest and quietest of the 5 sitting at Katsuki's table. Nobody will admit it, but once Midoriya selected this table for those closest to him to discuss officer selection, the others all fell into spots that would provide them the best access to his conversation. Before Izuku could comment on Momo's statement, a squelching screech pierced the noisy cafeteria. It repeated, a horrible UURRRREE, as the older students jumped to their feet. The alarm dimmed, manually lowered, as a vaguely feminine, robotic voice announced, security level 3 has been broken. All students, please evacuate in an orderly fashion. Repeat. All students, please evacuate in an orderly fashion. Security level 3 has been broken. Izuku saw Kaminari catch an upperclassman's attention and ask, what's security level 3? It means someone infiltrated the building, the upperclassman said, nervous. I've never heard it in my 3 years here. All of the security information is in the student handbook, fortunately. The cafeteria devolved into chaotic struggle as students of various ages and quirks pushed and shoved, jolted and slammed into each other as they tried to press into the main paths out of the cafeteria. Izuku grunted as he was squashed between 3 of his fellow classmates. He tried his best to remain close to his entire class, but the shifting nature of the crowd divided them from the 4 groups they had been. Nearby were Tenya and Ochako, both close to a window. What do you see outside? Izuku shouted. Tenya rotated his neck in a painful-looking manner and pressed his face against the thick glass panels. He grunted, shoved close to the window as the crowd shifted again. Thea the press. How did they get on campus? Even with the shouting, Izuku picked up every word. He frowned and scanned the crowd, making sure to move with it. Kaminari and Kirishima were attempting to calm people down and slow the onrush, but their efforts were fruitless as the older students ignored them. We have to get their attention somehow. There's no need to panic. And then an idea struck him. Izuku grinned and turned back to Tenya. Get Ochako's attention and then get airborne. The crowd pushed and swept him away as he shouted the last of his instructions. Find a way to get everyone's attention. With that, he followed the crowd and left the 2 behind. Although he tried to reach out to others and calm them down, it was the sight of Tenya soaring above their heads and slamming into the far wall that got everyone's attention. Everyone, everything is fine, he shouted over the din. Izuku smiled as Tenya continued. It's just the press. There's no reason to panic. Everything is fine. That afternoon, once the press had been evicted from the campus and the hole in the security sealed, Izuku and Momo stood before their class once more. They glanced at each other and nodded. Izuku started, saying, with everything that happened at lunch, we were still able to select candidates for the remaining student officer positions. For secretary, I asked Aizawa-sensei for copies of everyone's handwriting. While simplistic, we agreed that having clear and legible handwriting would be most important at the present. As such, we're offering the position to Ashido Mina. Will you accept it? The pink girl grinned, bright and wide, and nodded. Next is student representative. They'll be required to attend all student council meetings, and between calming the panic from the alarm and his initiative to select a class president through an election, we are offering the position to Iida Tenya to be our face amongst our peers. The bespectacled boy stood and bowed, thanking them. And last is captain for the sports festival. Yaoyorozu and I discussed this at length, and after Todoroki expressly asked to be skipped over, we decided Bakugo Katsuki would be the best choice for captain. He has his own style of motivation, and will make for an interesting promotional material. Katsuki glared at the 2 for a long moment. He then clicked his teeth and looked away. Fine, just don't get in my fucking way at the sports festival. It would look bad if I don't win. Now that that's done, Aizawa said, ignoring the grumblings directed at Katsuki, you 5 are to report to the main auditorium once class has finished. Class 1B will finally get to present their officers today, and I don't want Blood King getting on my case about his students being better than mine. The main auditorium had changed little since the entrance exam weeks ago. Izuku stood with the rest of Class 1A's officers on the stage. Class 1B had arrived a few minutes before them and occupied the left side of the stage. The student council president stood centered on the stage and as close to the rear as possible. Izuku introduced his classmates to the gathered audience of other first years, second years, and third years. Although he had been nervous, Katsuki's comment about taking his position as class president was enough for Izuku to tighten down on the nerves that threatened to ruin his short speech. And then Class 1B began. The girl with a strawberry blonde ponytail stepped forward and bowed to the audience. I am Kendo Itsuka, president of Class 1B. Our vice president is Kodai Yui. Our secretary is Shiozaki Ibara. Our representative is Mono Manito. Our captain for the sports festival is Tetsu. Thank you for your time and I look forward to working with all of you. She bowed once more and stepped back into line. Izuku took a moment to consider Class 1B's other officers. Kodai appears to be quiet, perhaps even Sky. She may even be close with Kendo. Shiozaki, I'm not sure. Those vines on her head suggest a powerful quirk similar to Kamui Woods. Monoma has to be more pompous than Aoyama, and I can't get a good read on Tetsu right now. Thank you all for being here, a tall blonde third year said. We look forward to seeing you all grow into the heroes of tomorrow. With a smile, he added, plus ultra. The 10 first years on stage repeated the last 2 words and were dismissed with the other students. The last thing Izuku saw of Class 1B's officers was their president. She gave him a soft smile as she passed from view. Chapter 9. The days before their first off-campus heroic training exercise had Class 1A in an excited flutter. While their hero training did include daily exercising and quirk training, said training didn't include scenarios or more advanced training like they had experienced with All Might's battle training class. Too often they found that All Might either didn't show up to teach or was only there to give suggestions on techniques or strengthening their quirks. Izuku was worried, especially since every attempt to speak with Toshinori fell through due to unknown reasons his mentor hadn't explained. I'm beginning to plateau again. I was hoping to be past 30% for the sports festival and now I fear I may not reach it. Aizawa wants me to focus on my schoolwork and Recovery Girl says I should only focus on increasing my power threshold when working with either All Might or Aizawa. On the day of the exercise, Aizawa returned to their classroom in the afternoon. For today's basic hero training, All Might, myself, and another hero will supervise. 3 heroes. Must be something special. Shiro, sitting next to Izuku, raised his hand and asked, is it battle training again or are we getting to do something new? Something new. The school does need to prepare you to handle disaster relief, from fires to floods. Aizawa displayed a long card, printed with the training topic. It's time for rescue training. The class cheered, with many happy about the change. Not everyone was pleased with the training focus, but they didn't complain about the selection. I'm not finished yet, Aizawa said. He pressed a button and the wall opened, revealing their packaged costumes. You all have the option to wear your uniform or your workout clothes. Some of your uniforms may not be suitable for parts of today's training, but that's for you to decide. This will be a good opportunity to find out if there are any elements of your costumes you want to consider changing. You'll get the opportunity after the summer vacation, but for now try and keep that in mind. The facility we'll be at today is off campus, so we'll be going by bus. I'll answer questions after we arrive. Class 1A strolled out to the bus, dressed in their costumes. Izuku glanced around, happy to be back in costume and taking time he hadn't before to scan everyone's suits. Many wore tight uniforms like him, modified to best show off and take advantage of their quirks. Why are we still standing around? Aizawa said, entering the bus. His tired eyes found Izuku. Midoriya, get everyone organized and on board. I haven't heard from All Might, so he must be meeting us there. Izuku nodded and shouted, line up. Although there was some pushing and shoving, the class formed an orderly line and boarded the bus. He followed, near the back, and sat on the sideways seats near the front, between Asui and Sato. The bus departed UA for the off-campus complex and their rescue training session. There's something that's been troubling me, Midoriya, Asui said after a few minutes. What is it, Asui? Call me Suyu, she responded. You know, your quirk reminds me a lot of All Might's. Caught off guard by Suyu's calm remark, Izuku's face flushed and his old, nervous personality slipped through. What you think so? He stuttered. Oh man, this isn't good. All Might and I haven't talked about what story I'm supposed to tell my classmates. I don't know if I can continue to rely upon the story we told Kachan and his mother back in middle school. While it's technically correct, lying is tiring. Plus, somebody might catch me in a lie, other than Kachan that is. Thinking about it, Asui has a point, Hiroshima said, ignoring Suyu's name correction. We all saw the tapes from battle training, where you jumped from floor to floor with ease and smashed Bakugo into an angry, bruised mess. He grinned, and continued. Of course, if it's just a simple strength-enhancing quirk, that's still pretty cool. You can do a lot with that, unlike my hardening quirk. His arm stretched out and soft skin turned into a hard, crystalline material. He twisted his arm, showing off the way his quirk showed off his muscular forearm. It's great for fighting, but it doesn't look terribly cool and it ain't flashy in the slightest. Izuku laughed, pleased by the change in topic. But your hardening quirk is cool, Kirishima. It's definitely a good quirk for a pro, and I bet you'll figure out a way to make it flashy. You really think so, Midoriya? Kirishima asked. Having a strong quirk isn't all it takes to be a pro. Don't forget that you need to be popular too. My naval laser is both strong and cool, Aoyama bragged. It is perfect for a pro. That's until you blow up your stomach, Ashido teased. Aoyama looked away with a dismissive sigh, as Ashido turned to Izuku. Sue's question got me thinking. Aizawa-sensei gave me a packet about everyone in our class to help with anything I need to write that needs specific details, and your quirk was censored with a thick black bar. I'm a little embarrassed to admit I forgot about it until now. She leaned forward, grinning. So what is your quirk? It's complicated, Izuku said, looking down. I'll just have to rely on what we told Kachan. I assume you all heard the story that the kid who got the answers closest to All Might was quirkless, right? They all nodded, leaning in close. Well, that was me, and until a few years ago, I thought I actually was quirkless. What ended up happening is that my mother met a woman who claimed she could pass on her quirk to someone without one. Truth is that she activated latent quirks into something workable. A friend of hers worked with me afterwards, since my body wasn't prepared for what I was capable of. I hope that's enough to satisfy them. Man, that's pretty cool, Kirishima said. Although speaking of cool and strong, I'd say both Todoroki and Bakugo fit the bill. Yeah, but Bakugo's an asshole. Only edgy teenagers and crazy villains will like him, Tsuyu said, leapfrogging off Kirishima's statement. Katsuki leapt to his feet, shouting, "Watch when I'm more popular than you, frog girl. Enjoy only having babies and weirdos as fans." Tsuyu pointed at him in his reaction as if it proved her point. It does in a way, Izuku admitted to himself. I wonder if they'd believe me if I said he was worse when we were kids. You know, Bakugo, Kaminari began, it's pretty sad that barely 2 weeks in and we all know that your personality only appeals to, how did Asui put it? Edgy teenagers and crazy villains. I mean, you're a laugh, but Endeavor is nicer than you and his son doesn't even like him. How about I smash you face in, Pichu? Katsuki shouted. Izuku sighed, watching Katsuki get caught in a shouting match with half the class. Shut up, we're here, Aizawa called back as the bus stopped. They followed him from the bus and into the massive complex where their training would be happening. Inside were 6 zones, designed like attractions of Destinyland but with hazards rivaling the craziest variety shows. I didn't know UA. I hired the ride designers for Destinyland, Momo said, awed. Looks like there are zones for floods, landslides, conflagrations, earthquakes, and more. I'm almost worried about what they don't have zones for. You're very perceptive, the mystery teacher said, joining Class 1A. This facility is home to nearly every disaster and accident you can imagine. I designed it myself. Welcome to the unforeseen simulation joint. Their mystery teacher was stocky, wearing a white space suit with a black dome and yellow rain boots. You're 13, the space hero, Izuku said as his memorized notes came to the front of his mind. A few of his peers gasped, familiar with the pro hero before them. Hey 13, Aizawa said. Where's All Might? He never showed, so I thought he was meeting us here. 13 waved him over and leaned in close. I thought Nedzu would have told you, Eraserhead. He used up nearly all of his time during his morning commute. Izuku saw 13 hold up 3 fingers and sighed. I knew he was down to only 3 hours a day when he pushes it, but I didn't realize it was that much of an issue. It would be easier if I could join him in the field as a hero, shouldering his burden. How illogical, Aizawa complained. He turned to his students and raised his voice. Looks like All Might won't be joining us, unfortunately. Let's get started, then. Before we do so, 13 cut in, there are some things I want to talk about before we start. As many of you know, my quirk is Black Hole. It can consume and destroy anything. While I use it to save people and handle disasters, it has the capacity to kill. I suspect some of you have similar quirks, those that are dangerous and potentially lethal. In our quirk-based society, their usage is heavily restricted, monitored, and regulated. While it appears stable, with one mistake a powerful quirk can kill countless people. I've been briefed on your previous classwork using quirks. Aizawa's test was determining your potential. All Might's battle training showed you how your quirks can work in combat. Today, you will learn how to use them to save lives. Your powers are A, and I stress this because some students always have narrow views of who they are as heroes and not meant to harm others. I hope that when you leave today, you will understand what it means to help people. I expect great things from all of you. As they applauded 13, Aizawa plowed ahead. Great. Now to Bagina. He drifted off, his gaze focused on the plaza between the different zones. Like the rest, Izuku followed Aizawa's line of sight. Black and purple mist swirled, expanding, until a hand grabbed the side of the forming hole and a head emerged. With shaggy gray hair, red eyes, and a discolored hand covering his face, Izuku knew it was a villain. Dread and fear coursed up his spine and he stepped back onto someone's foot. All Might said nothing about this feeling. Huddle up and stick together. Aizawa shouted back at them. He ignored their confusion, moving forward. 13. Protect the students. Dozens of people villains poured through a giant, black tear in the USJ. What's going on? Are those more battle robots? Kirishima asked. They look a human. Worse, Aizawa said, pulling on his goggles. Those are real villains. A figure emerged from the mist, formed from the same black and purple wisps. 13 and Eraserhead. According to our staff schedule, All Might is supposed to be here. So that was you, scum. That day the press somehow got on campus. They've been planning that long. Even longer. The man with the hand mask stepped forward. Where is he? We've come all this way and brought so many playmates. All Might, the symbol of Pisa, is he here? His attention turned to Izuku and the other students standing behind Aizawa. I wonder if some dead kids will bring him here. Well, there's only one way to find out. Blood pounded in Izuku's ears as the others shouted about the villains. He noticed Momo speaking with 13 and Todoroki frowning as he looked around the USJ. They thought All Might was going to be here. If that's the reason they came here, then what is their goal? To fight him. Kill him. The last thought froze his blood. This place is far from campus and we're the only ones scheduled to be here, Todoroki told some of the others. Without the sensors activating, nobody at UA knows what's happening here. That's smart, for a bunch of villains, Kirishima said, hardening a fist. They must be after something, going to such lengths. They're here to kill All Might, Izuku whispered. Judging from the shocked reactions, his voice had carried beyond his own ears. 13. Aizawa shouted over any potential panic. Evacuate the facility and continue to try and make contact with the school. One of the villains is jamming the facility's sensors and our communications. I'd bet they have someone with an electric-type quirk blocking everything. Kaminari, see if you can break through the villain's interference and get in contact with UA. It should only take 5 minutes for reinforcements to arrive, once you get through. Kaminari nodded, a little green. Sensei, you can't mean to fight them all alone, Izuku said. He had only seen and fought Aizawa in one-on-one situations. You can't erase all of their quirks. Your fighting style is much better suited towards fighting one-on-one, especially if you can ambush your opponent. Fighting so many in a crowd won't. Only the laziest of heroes is a one-trick pony, Midoriya, Aizawa said, calm even as his scarf released its tight bonds around his shoulders. 13. Protect my students. With that, he flicked his scarf out and leapt down the staircase. While Izuku wanted to watch Aizawa take down the multitude of villains, he followed 13 and the others towards the exit. They were only a dozen meters from the doors when the black mist appeared before them. Terrible yellow eyes glowered from the black and purple fog. I cannot allow you to leave, no, he said, shocking them. We are the League of Villains. Forgive our audacity, but we've come here to your school source of heroism to kill All Might, the symbol of peace. I wish I wasn't right, Izuku thought. Why couldn't they just be regular villains? Instead, we have to fight an entire league dedicated to killing All Might. We were under the impression that All Might would be here today, the smoke villain continued. We will have other opportunities to strike at him, if he doesn't appear today. Even with the change in schedule, consider yourselves unlucky. For my role remains unchanged. While 13 prepared his quirk, Katsuki and Kirishima took the initiative and jumped past the pro-hero to engage the villain. They both threw a devastating punch, hitting the villain simultaneously. Then we'll just have to take you down first, Kirishima bragged, his hardening quirk still active as he landed. Bet you didn't see that coming. The mist villain reformed, revealing a long metal collar and a simple black and white suit beneath his smoky head. That was closea. Though you may be students, you could one day become the next generation of great heroes. That cannot happen. 13 gasped, startled, and shouted, "Get back, you two." Before Katsuki and Kirishima could move, a thick, dark fog overtook the young heroes. "Be gone. Ride in torment until your final breath," the villain said. Izuku braced himself as the smoke flowed over and surrounded him. A moment passed as a strange lightness overwhelmed his senses before he emerged, shouting, and fell several feet into the flood zone's huge pool. He closed his mouth just as he hit the water, but that wasn't enough from preventing a brief torrent of water slipping up his nose. He teleported us just like he brought those villains in. Why are they going so far in their attempt to kill All Might? There has to be more going on than a simple assassination. If that's what it was, there would be easier ways to get him. Izuku would have let his thoughts continue, but a villain charged him underwater. With shark features and haphazard scuba equipment, it was clear the villain had been specially deployed to the flood zone due to their ability to kill in the water. "Don't take it personal, kid, but it's over for you," he charged, mouth open wider than Izuku's head. As he neared, Tsuyu appeared from the side and smashed into the villain with a fierce kick, knocking him aside. Her tongue flicked out, wrapped around Izuku, and they fled the water. He landed onto the deck of a ship floating in the pool, Tsuyu's tongue releasing its hold on him. A second later, Minoru Mineta joined him on the deck with a hard impact. "Thanks, Asui," Izuku said as Tsuyu climbed aboard. "I remember asking you to call me Tsuyu." She glanced back and frowned. "We're in trouble out here. There's at least a dozen in the water." Izuku nodded, and remembered something the mist villain had said. Even with the change in schedule, they knew our schedule, he said. They got it that day the press rushed onto campus last week. Todoroki was right when he said they had been prepared for this, even if things aren't going as they thought. "But it's not like they can kill All Might," Mineta shouted, punching the air. "He'll thrash them once he arrives. We just gotta wait." "Mineta," Tsuyu said, sounding more confident than she looked. "They must have a plan to kill him. Otherwise, what would be the purpose of coming here? Killing us might be part of their plan, and I fear they were able to get so many villains involved so they could try and kill us, but their target is All Might. If we wait for him, there's a chance we might not make it, and they may just kill him anyways." Mineta began to panic and Izuku couldn't help the feeling of demoralization flooding him due to Tsuyu's words. He gave the frog girl a concerned look and she looked away, abashed. She's trying to be honest with Mineta. We're in the dark about what's happening and she's right that they have a plan for killing All Might. But if they're going this far to try and kill him, there must be a reason why. His thoughts drifted and drew upon old memories from his childhood watching All Might and their meetings between taking the HRLT and entering UA. "You can be a hero." Izuku clenched his fists and turned to Mineta and Tsuyu, both with long, uncertain faces. "If we want to prevent them from killing All Might, then we have to be heroes. We have to fight and win. How can we possibly win? You said that they might be able to kill All Might. We have to wait for UA, Midoriya." Izuku placed both hands on the nervous boy's shoulders. "Mineta, calm down and think. The villain's down there, waiting for us. They're suited for aquatic combat, right? Don't ignore my point," Mineta whimpered, shaking. "Oh, how I want to tell Mineta how proud All Might will be of him when we win, but I have to stay focused on the present." The ringleaders must have recruited their team knowing about the different environments in the USJ, right? Tsuyu asked. Izuku grinned. "Exactly. Their intel told them that. However, even all of their planning has left us with one oddity. They brought you, Tsuyu to the flood zone. If I was planning this, I would have sent her elsewhere." "What does that mean?" Mineta asked, confused. "They don't know about our quirks, Mineta," Izuku said, his confidence rising. He saw its impact on the other two, how they straightened. "It's because they don't know about our quirks that their strategy was to scatter and overwhelm us with numbers. While they have us beat in terms of numbers and experience, we only need to outthink them to win." He grinned and finished, saying, "We win by exploiting the fact they are unaware of our quirks. Even the little of Suyu's they've seen will make them wary." "I didn't show off much of my quirk during battle training, too," Suyu added. "I can jump really high and stick to walls. My tongue extends up to 20 meters. There are some other frog abilities, but they aren't that helpful right now." Izuku nodded. "You have a good range of skills, Suyu. I just have my strength, although I've been working on new ways to wield it. However, I can only control a quarter of my potential power without hurting myself, so I won't be able to create and use as much force as I'd like." There was a plop sound as Mineta removed one of his balls. He stuck it to the ship and said, "It's really sticky, especially if I'm feeling good. While a new one will grow to replace the one I've removed, if I pull too many too fast, I'll bleed. Fortunately, they bounce off of me instead of sticking." Izuku exchanged a look with Suyu and smiled. "If we play our cards right and what I'm thinking of works, I have a plan to get us out of the zone." And before he could begin explaining his plan, the ship rocked as it begun to take on water. Izuku calmed his nerves as he came to stand on the ship's edge. The villains below jeered as his companions prepared to fulfill their parts of his plan. "If this doesn't work, I'll be the one they get first. I won't let them touch my friends as long as I breathe." With one last deep breath, he jumped and shouted, "Face my might." He soared over the villains, almost hovering for a moment, and then begun to descend towards the water. They grinned, and although a pulse of fear coursed through him, he drew back 2 fingers with his thumb and filled them with one for all. "I have one chance to get this right. Here goes nothing." He released his fingers and a shockwave struck the water's surface and created a deep depression. There was a moment when he feared it would fill normally, but then the depression turned into a whirlpool. As it formed, Izuku shouted the first words that came to him. "Awaji crunch." The impact gave him a second wind and he rose from the water. Izuku turned back to the ship and called out, "Suyu. Mineta, now." Suyu sprung from the ship, tongue launched as if it was a grappling hook. It caught Izuku and reeled him in. Once the three were reunited, Mineta threw a long barrage of purple balls into the whirlpool, sticking to the villains as the whirlpool dragged them together. Their attack completed, the 3 heroes soared over the trapped villains and landed near the flood zone's edge with a soft splash. "Your plan worked without any improvisation, Midoriya," Suyu said as they bobbed in the rippling water. "As I said, they were unaware of our capabilities. Hopefully any villains between us and the entrance are as ignorant." Izuku smiled even as his eyes drifted to find Aizawa still locked in combat with the villains in the central area. "There's still more fighting until we've won, but we won the first skirmish." Chapter 10. The 3 students heroes in training swam to the edge of the flood zone, looking to rest on the concrete barrier. "I took an amazing dump this morning. They'll be stuck together all day," Mineta bragged, relying on Suyu to reach shore. A few trickles of blood marred his face. "Ooh, that's something I'd rather not know," Izuku said. "Hopefully that doesn't make arresting them harder on the police. Anyways, we got lucky with how well the plan turned out. They weren't smart, sticking together along the surface. Although, they probably didn't expect us to pose a serious threat to them." They reached the shallows and walked over to the concrete barrier keeping the pool's water contained. There they were able to see Aizawa, locked in an ongoing fight with a large group of villains. "I feel terrible about being worried about him, about doubting his skills. I'll have to ask him to tell me the full story of this fighting style and how he goes about taking on large groups. It's hard to get him talking about his experiences in the field, but the few times I got him rambling were worth it. I wonder if anyone else has ever got him talking like that." "What do we do now?" Suyu asked. "Right now, find a way to call for help from the outside," Izuku said. He leaned against the short wall, eyes tracing the area before them. "Following the shoreline should keep us away from the plaza fight until we have to get out of the water. As long as we remain out of Aizawa-sensei's fight and don't draw too many villains from it, we should be fine. Once we reach the stairs, we head for the exit, where we were earlier. If we could get, say, Iida out the door, he can race to UA, alert the school, and bring the cavalry to mop up the remaining villains and bring all of us home, safe and whole. Maybe even All Might will come," Mineta added, his legs splashing. "Maybe," Izuku said, distracted. He watched the villains attempt to swarm Aizawa. He slipped around their attacks and countered, always 3 steps ahead of their attacks. Yet even as he took them down, those defeated earlier rose, weary, injured, and looking to get their pound of flesh. But there's something else we'll shoulda know, must do. He turned to Tsuyu and Mineta. We need to help Aizawa-sensei. The villains he's already defeated are starting to get back to their feet, and he hasn't reached the ringleaders. When he said that, he glanced at the man with the hand on his face and the massive birdman standing next to him, its brain exposed and showing a muscular form that could rival All Might. You can't be serious, Midoriya. Mineta all but screamed. Izuku was tempted to ask the boy why he wanted to be a hero. We just got away from those water villains and you want to take on more. I'm with Mineta on this one, Midoriya, Tsuyu said. We got to safety. We should regroup with the others. Then, I would be behind you for helping Aizawa-sensei. There is safety in numbers. Izuku frowned, but he admitted internally that Tsuyu had a point. Aizawa charged the ringleader. Enough of the minor villains on the ground are too far away to interfere. He tried once, twice, to land a blow before the villain caught his elbow. Said elbow began to blister, as if layer by layer, clothes, skin, and muscle were sliced away from his bones with the precision of a medical quirk. There was another exchange of blows as the pro-hero disengaged from the villain, but that was when the massive beast moved, seizing Aizawa by the head with a meaty hand. It then slammed him into the concrete ground. Aizawa struggled, pinned to the ground by his head while the other hand grabbed the nearest arm and twisted it. Meet the anti-symbol of peace, the ringleader said, his coarse voice carrying across to the young heroes. They shivered. The bio-engineered Numu, Hisamaker used his failure against All Might to shape him. There was a snap as Aizawa's arm was crushed. Izuku could feel through the water how Tsuyu and Mineta both shook. I can't blame them. That villaina, he said, it was bio-engineered. That's how they plan to kill All Might with a test tube product. One related to him. The ringleader taunted their teacher as Numu continued its attempt to merge Aizawa with the concrete. This is bad, Midoriya, Mineta said, his shivers and shakes giving way to an uncontrollable tremble. We have to change place plants right. Do we just hide here? Any word Izuku could offer was stuck in his throat. His heart raced. Yet cold sweat stuck to his skin and the power of one for all felt far away. Those other villains, they were no more than cannon fodder, with some given an environmental advantage so they could deal with the students. But those two and the one with the warping quirk, they're evil, and in a league that we can't hope to face today. A warp gate, all twisting black and purple, appeared near the ringleader. Tamura Shigaraki, he said, voice darker than when he had faced the gathered students. Kurogiri. About time. I am to assume you have dealt with 13. Shigaraki responded, almost giggling. Incapacitated, Kurogiri said. The word sounded like the villain had been insulted to Izuku. There were some students I failed to warp away. One of them, related to Ingenium I believe, escaped. As that's so, Shigaraki said. He spiraled into uncontrolled laughter, scratching at his uncovered cheeks, thumbs tucked close to his palms. Kurogiri. If you weren't our ticket out of here and if Sensei had someone to replace you, I'd turn you to dust. We won't stand a chance against dozens of pro-heroes. I won't waste quarters on a continue today. He turned from Aizawa. Numu, you can play with him later. We're leaving. Wait, leaving, Mineta said. Did he really say that? Tsuyu asked, hopefully. Izuku nodded. Sounds like it. There was a splash as Mineta jumped onto Tsuyu, hugging her tightly. We're saved. Gurgling quickly followed his excitement. Izuku glanced over and saw that the smaller boy was being held underwater. Mineta, what did you do this time? I've got a bad feeling, Midoriya, Tsuyu said, letting Mineta up for air. Yeah. Izuku pressed up against the shore. To do all of this, and then just leave. I don't understand it. Why leave without achieving their primary goal? They came here to kill All Might, but now they're just leaving. UA will be in greater danger if they escape, but not as bad as if they had gotten their opportunity to kill All Might, and then fled. We may have won today, driving them off, but they achieved a Pyrrhic victory against the world of heroes. Why strike now though? Before we leave, Shigaraki added, stretching. Let's leave some dead kids. In a blink, Shigaraki was right next to them, his right hand reaching for them. Let's wound the pride of the symbol of peace. His hand considered targets before reaching for Tsuyu's head. Mineta popped off one of his balls with a shaking arm, yet Izuku could only stare in horror. Why am I not moving? It seemed so easy during the exam. I want to move, to fight, to save a life, yet I'm just standing here. Before Shigaraki could touch Tsuyu, he stopped and chuckled. There's a reason you're my favorite hero, Eraserhead. The pro hero had lifted his head in defiance, eyes glowing red as he forced himself to channel his quirk, to thwart the villain. There was a gush of displaced water and Izuku realized he had finally moved, leaping from the water. One for all coursed through his body, filling body and fist as he targeted Shigaraki. The villain said something that the pounding blood in his ears blocked. The only thing audible was his voice, shouting, "Nagasaki smash." There was a violent implosion, as if 1,000 vibrating dust bunnies diverted the force of his punch. Instead of smashing apart Shigaraki's masked face, Numu had caught his punch in a meaty hand. The palm of its hand was destroyed, skin ripped away and bones and nerves exposed. No blood flowed onto Izuku's fist, yet it began to heal, stitching together as fibers reformed. The massive creature lifted Izuku into the air, dangling him before Shigaraki as he stood. That was very impressive, wounding Numu the way you did. And was that a smash? I heard. I hate All Might over all heroes. Maybe just maybe you're more than just a fan. More than a fan. Heya, he shouldn't know about One for All, about my powers and all mights. Unless Sensei, the one who formed Numu, is who I fear at Issa. Numu, he won't need that hand anymore. Destroy it and then give me the other hole. Izuku screamed as the hand around his began to crush it like an ant under a boot heel. Numu tossed him aside, perhaps to crush his head or pulverize his hand with a single strike, as Shigaraki turned on Tsuyu and Mineta, still petrified in the flood zone's waters. There was a thundering sound as the main doors were blown out, launched off their hinges. A tall figure, muscular and blonde, emerged from the ensuing cloud of dust. All Might stood there, removing his tie, and Izuku grinned through the pain. Fear not, his mentor bellowed so everyone in the USJ could hear him. I am here. While Mineta shouted and cried at the sight of All Might, Izuku noticed one thing about his mentor that chilled his spine and made his palms clammy. All Might isn't smiling. All Might was furious. Furious that his efforts to help people was limited by injuries, that he was limited as a hero to only a few hours every day. Furious that he had to choose between the work he had dedicated himself to and teaching the generation of heroes that would uphold everything he fought for. Furious that the villains were able to attack those same students and that only one of them, Tenya Iida, was able to escape and inform him and the other heroes of what was happening at a place they thought safe. When he had encountered the young man halfway between UA and the USJ, what little temper he had was sparked like a lightning bolt hitting a dead tree, and he could feel his capacity to use One for All growing. As he was informed about everything the boy knew of the attack, the scope and scale of the villains and their quirks, it threatened to overflow. 13. Terribly injured just so young Iida could escape. Aizawa, fighting against overwhelming odds. My colleagues are great heroes, and I wasted nearly all of my strength helping people with small incidents. I must remember my duty to the future, to my successor. I had a bad feeling, so I cut my talk with Nedzu short and came immediately. Students cried and grinned as he walked past. Their relief, their efforts, the fact they still held their lives filled him with hope and inspiration. Rest, my brave students. Then I ran into Iida, who told me what had occurred. It made my blood boil. A villain down below, with a hand over his face, spoke. You kept me waiting, hero. I thought I wouldn't get my shot at you today. All Might listened as the small-time villains grumbled amongst themselves, trying to build their courage to stand against him. It will not matter, though I hope they rethink their decisions in jail. He leapt from the top of the stairs, landed softly, and in a flash bulldozed through the villains to reach Aizawa. I should have been here, Aizawa. You have fought with the strength and heart of a dozen heroes today. Forgive my late arrival. He lifted the injured hero and set him aside, behind him. With another burst of speed, he pulled Izuku, Tsuyu, and Mineta away from their places near the villains and set them with Aizawa. Seeing Izuku's injured hand, broken and limp, sickened him. You have fought well, young Midoriya. I will fight on for you. To the entrance. Take Aizawa and hurry. He ignored their confusion, focusing on the villains before him. Their leader leaned over and picked up the hand that had fallen from his face from All Might's fast movements. Giggling, he said, throwing punches to save people. That's our state-sponsored violence. You're fast. Too fast for me today, but not as fast as Ia expected. There were whispers in the deepest dark, but I didn't think it was true, All Might. Are you really getting weaker? All Might, we may have to retreat, Izuku said. There was a fear in his voice that gave All Might pause. What has happened? Why are these villains here? That brain villain, they call it Numu. It was able to catch a punch at quarter strength and then regenerate from the blow. All Might considered the villain and noticed that while its right hand was injured, it was little more than discoloration on the palm, like a sunburn from a wintry day. I can't tell how strong its healing factor is or how it works other than it activated after my attack. Young Midoriya, All Might said, turning to face his student. Fear not. With that, he charged, arms folded back to opposite shoulders. Carolina smash. His arms flicked out in diagonal chops. Even with his speed, the villainous monster was able to deflect and counter his blows. The one Midoriya says is called Numu. What a dangerous enemy, withstanding such a blow. He then delivered a tackling punch, using the power of his back and legs to strengthen his attack. The boy got lucky, being able to overpower Numu's shock absorption, the villain said, almost gloating. If you want to really damage Numu, you should try and tear him apart, piece by piece. Although, I doubt you would have the time to finish. Thanks for the info, All Might called out, slipping behind Numu and with his shoulders level to the beast's hips, grabbed tight. He lifted and leaned back, slamming the villain into the ground. And while for a moment he felt success, it turned into bitter blood in his mouth. Somehow, the villain had dug sharp claws into his sides. He looked up at the ground and saw a warp portal around Numu's body, allowing its upper portions to reach where it otherwise shouldn't. You hoped to drive him into the concrete and slow him down, didn't you? Good job, Kurogiri. Perfect timing, turning everything against the symbol of Pisa. All Might groaned as the claws dug deeper. That's my weak point. It may know about my injury. I have to get out of this, or I may actually die. Kurogiri began to monologue, narrating their plan as All Might struggled to break free. Numu has dug too deep into my sides for me to make a clean break. As he struggled, he saw Izuku hand Aizawa to Tsuyu and Mineta before turning to race to his aid. Young Midoriya, as the boy charged, Kurogiri opened a warp gates in front of his proto-copyright Ga copyright. A crackling explosion drove back the black and purple mist. All Might could have laughed if he weren't so injured, seeing Katsuki emerge from wherever he had been sent and take advantage of the villain's monologue. The oversized cigar is mine, Deku, he shouted, entering the fight. As Katsuki pinned Kurogiri with glowing hands, All Might smiled at the ice spreading from Todoroki onto Numu as Kirishima attempted to blindside the ringleader. I heard you people are here to kill All Might, Todoroki said, his voice so much like his father. Scum like you could never kill the symbol of peace. All Might shattered the frozen limb and freed himself, removing the bits of Numu that remained in his sides. Blood trickled from his wounds as he separated the young heroes from the villains. I need to end this fast, or someone else may get badly injured. I won't allow such a thing to occur. Numu shifted, body returning from the shrinking warp gate. You've pinned down our way out, the villain ringleader said, pulling All Might's attention away from the fiend that had injured him. I should kill you first. You slipped up, handy, Katsuki said, sitting on Kurogiri's metal collar. He turned to the villain beneath him. It's just like thought. Those parts that can be used for his foggy warp gates are limited. You even use that misty shit to hide your real form, you piece of shit. If your whole body was mist and physical attacks didn't work, you'd never say remark on how close a blow was. All Might watched as Katsuki rubbed a glowing hand up and down the physical parts of the struggling Kurogiri. Try anything fishy and they'll be sending you to a prison's infirmary to treat your burns. Many pro-heroes will want to talk to Bakugo about his attitude, although it may help him build a loyal following. Vigilantes will love him. How shameful, our league of villains being thwarted by some kids, the ringleader said. Numu, Bring me the explosive brat's hands. We need our escape route back and some of my hands stink. They watched Numu heal from the damage caused by Todoroki's icy attack. The remaining frozen flesh was broken as its healing factor kicked in. Flesh bubbled as destroyed limbs reformed. All Might held out his arm, saying, "Get back. You were right about the healing factor, young Midoriya. To have more than just a shock absorption quirk. It explains much about what has happened today and what they know. Numu is a super-powered sandbag, designed to withstand your full power. His hyper-regeneration is just part of a multi-quirk formula designed for you, All Might," the ringleader bragged as Numu charged Katsuki. "He's fast." All Might intercepted Numu's attack, driving the creature back and away from the students. The impact shook the trees and the symbol of peace was driven back a few feet, arms held in a high block. "He doesn't know how to hold back," All Might said, spitting blood. "I would be impressed if it wasn't meant to kill me. Anything to save a comrade, right?" The ringleader said. "He's about to monologue. He hasn't learned from earlier. Just like earlier, with Eraserhead, before Numu broke him. He came at me with everything he had, for violence in the name of saving others is admirable, right hero? What a disgusting sentiment. We all thrive on violence, on using our quirks without the limitations of your precious society. But are we the same? No, they categorize us by the labels pressed upon us. You're good, you're evil, that's how it is. Symbol of peace. Bah, in the end, you're just another individual using violence to keep us down. Those of us, who would reform society, tear it down to show the world how false you truly are. In the end, violence only breeds more violence. I shall show the world the truth by killing you." All Might snorted. "What nonsense. Idealistic criminals may have a fire in their eyes, yet the only ideal you hold is the violence you try and blame on me." The ringleader sneered beneath the hand. "What you think changes nothing." All Might paused as he heard his students prepare to attack the villains. "No," he told them. "I will handle them. They could have succeeded in killing you if we hadn't stepped in," Todoroki said. "All Might, you're bleeding and, I think your time is, Midoriya added, frantic as he tried to not reveal the truth of their shared quirk. The symbol of peace grinned. "They'll be great heroes, but today they have done all they can." "Correct, Todoroki. Thank you for your assistance. Fear not though, it is time you all see firsthand just what a true pro-hero can do." The ringleader ignored him. "Numu, Kurogiri, All Might is yours. 4 kids should be easier than Eraserhead." He approached them, fingers stretching as he prepared. "I wish young Midoriya wasn't right. I'm close to my limit. I likely have a few minutes left. I'm weakening faster than I should, but I have no other choice. I can't turn my back on my students." "Why?" "Because I am the symbol of peace." All Might released his power, cracking the ground and startling the villains. He faced Numu's charge head-on, meeting the monster's power blow for blow. Words reached his ears from the villains, commenting on Numu's blend of quirks. "But that's the thing," All Might said as he continued to meet each fast and furious blow with one of his own. "It's absorption, not negation. There is a limit, so I will go beyond it. You say its purpose is to defeat me, to withstand all of my strength. Watch closely as I surpass your devilish creation." All Might shouted. Although more blood came from his mouth, he continued to meet and overpower each one of Numu's flurry of attacks. "Tell me, villain," he said as Numu reeled under his power. "Do you know the meaning of plus ultra? Here, let me show you." He took his power, the power of those before him, and forged it into a single punch and caught Numu right in the chest with an uppercut, sending the black monstrosity flying. It soared from his fist like a struck baseball, hit the ceiling, and powered through it and beyond the USJ. "That is how it is done. That is the truth of plus ultra. I am slowing down," he admitted to his fawning students. "At my prime, it would have taken just 5 punches to defeat that villain. But today, it took 300 to achieve victory. I have little time left. I must finish this. Now, villain, I believe it is time for you to surrender. I still have a few hundred more punches in me." You cheater," the ringleader hissed. "You call that weak, with what you did to Numu?" "Ah," he scratched any part of his head not covered by his mask. "You're still strong." "I was lied to." I thought you came to kill me, or am I wrong? All Might asked. Leave or surrender. Those are your only options, villains. If you claim you can kill me, then try it. He stood there as steam mixed with the rising dust. Nearly at my limit. I fear my true form will be exposed if I have to move and fight. Well, do you plan to fight or will you surrender? The ringleader grew anxious and his scratching worsened. If only we still had Numu. If only he took those hits we could win. Shigaraki, calm down, Kurogiri said. Numu caused damage, even if All Might pretends otherwise. Those kids are caught up in their hero worship and reinforcements can arrive anytime. We could kill him working together, but only if you act. Yes, Shigaraki said, frantic. Yes, we can do this. We can kill the symbol of peace. All Might stood his ground as the villains charged. Kurogiri created a swirling vortex of blacks and purples, impeding the fastest path towards stopping them. And then from the corner of his eye, Izuku lunged into the fray, his broken hand drawn to deliver one last blow. He smiled seeing his student, especially at the declaration, if you want All Might, you'll have to come through me. As his fist flew forward, aiming for the reaching hand. A gunshot tore through the USJ. The bullet hit Shigaraki's hand emerging from a warp gate and All Might relaxed. They've arrived. You did well, Iida, bringing reinforcements. The villains retreated. Although there were several more attempts by the fresh heroes to stop them, they slipped through their fingers like warm sand on a blistering day. Toshinori looked down at Izuku, who had landed belly first on the floor, his muscular decreasing in size and power. Enough dust and smoke hung to his body to disguise his shifting body from the other students. You've done well today, young Midoriya, he said with his characteristic smile. They could have had me there, yet it was your quick thinking and reflexes that made them hesitate long enough for the others to arrive. Before the other students could approach or even get a clear look at him, Smintos raised a barrier between mentor and student and the rest of Class 1A. While this is concerning, hopefully we have time to prepare before they try and strike again. I will need to speak with Tsukauchi about what the police will do to help find and stop this Shigaraki and his League of Villains. I should finish young Midoriya's individual quirk training. The time when he will need to control all of One for All is approaching sooner than I feared. Chapter 11. Izuku sighed as he passed through the gates of UA. Hi. Although school was cancelled the day after the USJ attack, the student council was using the day to gather, determine all of the facts behind the attack, and discuss the student response to the attack. I'm going to be explaining everything that happened. I did tell Yaoyorozu that I would be fine on my own. He looked down at his right hand, healed thanks to Recovery Girl's fast-working quirk. UA wouldn't be able to operate the way it does if it wasn't for her. So many injuries, so many accidents that need to be patched up and healed. It's a shame that healing quirks are so rare, given just how desirable they are. The meeting room was inside the third door on the left on the ground level. The interior was decorated with only a long U-shaped table and several dozen chairs. When he walked through the door, Izuku was unsurprised to find a majority of the chairs had already been filled. The few students who turned upon hearing the door open took double takes as they realized just who had entered and watched him closely as he crossed the room, gazing intently at his chair. He sat down with a sigh and the person to his left coughed. Nice to see you arrive, Midoriya, Itsuka Kendo said once she got his attention. The president of Class 1B nursed a cup of tea. How are you feeling? We all heard about the attack yesterday. Some of the guys in my class are jealous about it, but I'm more relieved my class didn't get caught up in that mess. I'm good, Kendo, Izuku said. I got healed by Recovery Girl after we were all evacuated. I had the worst of it out of everyone in my class. As that's so. There was a pause as she sipped her tea. I'd bet you got hurt trying to help someone. Kendo laughed when Izuku flushed. You know, it could have been us that faced the attack instead of your class. We were at the USJ that morning with 13, our homeroom teacher, and Ectoplasm, so knowing that it could have been us. There was a lot of arguing and discussing what could have happened if it had been. As I said, some of the guys are a bit hot-headed and wished they could have been the ones fighting, but I would say most of us are relieved to not be fighting villains so early. Anyways, I'll do my best to keep our class from bothering yours tomorrow, especially since everyone's going to be curious about Class 1A. Izuku wanted to respond, but the last few members of the council had finally arrived and the meeting started. The president, tall, blonde, and still rather plain, stood, and after a few moments, the room went silent. Rumor was that he was one of the 3 best students still at UA and was interning with one of All Might's former sidekicks. I don't really remember him from last year's sports festival. I honestly feel bad about that, if the rumors are true. Plus, I'm going to be the focus of this meeting. I'm calling today's emergency meeting of the Universal Academy of Heroics Student Council to order, the president said, his naturally friendly face made to appear stern. As you've been informed, yesterday afternoon the unforeseen simulation joint was attacked by multiple villains along with their leader, calling themselves the League of Villains. Principal Nedzu is concerned unfounded rumors will spread through the student body and potentially be spread to the media, so he's asked me to gather everyone here immediately and make sure every story spread through the school matches the facts of what happened yesterday. He turned to Izuku. Midoriya, as the class president of those involved, I will leave it to you to explain what happened and answer any questions others may have. The president sat down and Izuku stood, wishing once again that Momo had joined him. The villains arrived shortly after we reached the USJ for rescue training. One of their leaders, Kurogiri, used his quirk, Warp Gates, to transport over 100 villains into the USJ. While a majority appeared in the central plaza, several were sent to each of the 6 zones. Aizawa-sensei engaged the villains in the plaza while 13 prepared to escort us out of the facility and to safety. However, the villains had other plans. Kurogiri blocked our escape. 2 of my classmates, Bakugo Katsuki and Kirishima Eijiro, attempted to take down the villain, but instead Kurogiri warped about 2/3 of the class into the various zones. I only know parts of what the others went through, but myself, along with Asui Suyu and Mineta Minoru were warped into the flood zone and dumped into the large pool. A few of the older students joked about the flood zone, but Izuku ignored them. We regrouped on the ship, made a plan, and were able to disable and escape the villains surrounding the boat in the water. I would estimate there was 12 to 15 in total. That was when we encountered the ringleader and his weapon. His fists tightened and with a long, shallow breath, Izuku pressed on. Their leader's name is Shigaraki Tamura and he has a disintegration quirk which he used on Aizawa-sensei and attempted to use on Asui Suyu. I tried to attack him, but was stopped by his weapon, Numu. It is a biological creation, given multiple quirks for the purpose of killing All Might. The only quirks I witnessed were hyper-regeneration and shock absorption. He paused, letting the others soak in his words. The room chilled, as if a winter gust had pushed all the heat from the room. Nervous glances flickered about the room, but Izuku noticed most always found him in the end. I wonder how this sounds to them. I don't know if I would have believed it if I hadn't been there. Numu severely injured Aizawa-sensei, with my injuries being less severe and already healed. There may have been more serious casualties if All Might didn't arrive then. One of our classmates, Iida Tenya, was able to escape the USJ with the purpose of informing UA about what was happening. 13 had self-caused injuries inflicted upon him by Kurogiri, who remained near the exit to keep word escaping the USJ. In the end, All Might pushed through an injury and defeated Numu, which was taken into custody by the police, along with 72 villains. Shigaraki and Kurogiri escaped when pro-hero reinforcements arrived. Izuku then sat down. He glanced around the chamber. A wide range of conflicted and jealous looks were flashed in his direction, and there were some who seemed to doubt his words. Maybe I should have gone into deeper details about All Might's fight against Numu. Hopefully that would be enough to pacify anyone's jealousy and doubt. Any questions? The president asked, a shade paler than earlier. If I may, a second-year student with scaly skin said. This Numu you mentioned, how can you be so sure that it's a bioengineered weapon? Is there any chance it was born with the quirks it possessed? Shigaraki openly stated that Numu was not only biologically engineered to kill All Might, but I specifically remember him referring to it as being the anti-symbol of peace, Izuku said. There's also the fact it didn't appear to be terribly intelligent. It acted more like a drone or puppet, following orders without thought or argument. His answer sparked nervous chatter. He suspected the idea that villains could create and give multiple quirks to a creature frightened people, and likely went against everything they believed about quirks. I wonder how they'd react if the truth about how I got my quirk got out. Even if they heard the story I gave my class, which would likely be enough to unsettle them. What was their goal? A third year with gills asked. There were snorts from around the room. Must have been so shocked by the biological engineering and multiple quirks that she missed that comment. To kill All Might, Izuku repeated, his voice now quiet. The girl flushed as the room rippled with his response, nearly everyone repeating those 4 words to themselves as if it was unfathomable. A minute of silence fell on the chamber before the president dismissed them, looking uncertain given what they had all just heard. Izuku remained in his seat, watching people leave, until there were only a few left. That was surprisingly short, Kendo said, startling Izuku. I thought we would be here until late afternoon, with everyone asking you questions and pressing for details. Although with what you said, a bunch of them are probably still reeling from the implications of what you just told us. Fortunately it was short. I wonder how much they'll actually tell their classmates, though. Izuku stood and Kendo followed. I'm surprised you didn't question me. Your class will be the one most interested in the specifics about what happened. The sports festival is coming up and it's almost tradition for the hero classes to try and one-up each other. I wasn't sure what to ask, other than expanding upon a few points, but I'll probably just ask Yaoyorozu or one of the other girls instead. They left the meeting room and headed towards the entrance. You skimming over your encounter with the villains in the flood zone and All Might's fight will make more rumors sprout tomorrow, not less. I couldn't exactly explain what happened in the flood zone in detail while only giving speculation as to what occurred in the other 5 zones along with near the door. The few hotheads in my class would get worked up over how I didn't sing their praises for the school to hear and likely correct every 3rd word out of my mouth. And All Might, Kendo pressed. I was told not to speak too much about it, Izuku said, suddenly nervous. The police say they'll be investigating the incident for a while and they want to keep some details away from the public. Kendo finished. She snorted and they stepped outdoors. I never realized just how much is kept from regular people until coming here. She stopped, Izuku taking several more steps before turning back to her. Do you think there's a connection between when the press got onto campus last week and yesterday's attack? Izuku remembered what Aizawa had said and nodded. They told us they got their hands on the schedules. With the outrage over the attack, security for the sports festival will be tighter than it has been in decades. UA can't afford to let something like the USJ attack happen during the festival. It may not be necessary, Kendo said. Her right fist expanded to the size of her head as she waved it at Izuku. Just you watch. Class 1B is going to remind everyone that just because 1A got to fight with some cannon fodder villains that they aren't better than us. We'll sweep all of the events in the medal podium. Izuku grinned. You say that, but then you'll just have to watch as we stack the final round. Everyone's going to know the names of my classmates once the festival is over, yet when you speak of yours all they'll ask is, what's Class 1B? She flushed and attempted to box in his ears. Izuku laughed and for a moment, his worries about the USJ attack and his growth as a hero faded. Toshinori leaned back into the sofa, a mug of tea in hand. Izuku sat across from him, curious. Classes that morning had been normal and few of his classmates reported being talked to outside of more general remarks about the attack. Your message made it sound like there was something pressing you wanted to talk about. Does it involve my training? I should have expected you to hit it on the head, young Midoriya, Toshinori said. He sighed and took a sip. After the attack, I visited Aizawa in the hospital. He has made it clear that he feels I've been neglecting my responsibility involving your training. I have been so focused on settling into my work here that I had missed the fact you've plateaued for longer than any time in the past. Izuku straightened as much as he could on the short stool he sat on. The teacher's lounge has odd furniture. I've been meaning to talk to you about that, but with classes starting and the attack a few days ago, there's been a lot on my plate compared to before. We've both been handling more than we're used to, especially compared to during the past few years, Toshinori said, nodding. I understand. Aizawa also said your classmates were disappointed they didn't get to speak with me about my fight. I would admit I'm a little surprised about how irreverent they sound. It's clear I made a huge impact upon them. Likely larger than the one I've made upon your generation in general. Your All Might, the symbol of peace, Izuku said, as if his classmates' reverence was something to be expected. Of course it's like that. We all grew up seeing you defeat villain after villain and save civilians by the hundreds. Your presence in the world is more like the old-fashioned comic heroes than the top heroes in other countries. I can't think of any heroes that are popular here like you or overseas. He paused at Toshinori's amused expression and looked down into his mug. While 13 and Aizawa-sensei never said it aloud, it's clear that you were late because you reached your 3-hour limit before reaching UA yesterday. Issa, is that still your limit? Things would be easier if it was. Toshinori looked away, his long blonde bangs hiding his face. Recovery girl confirmed that I have at best 2 hours a day now, assuming I don't push myself like I did defeating Numu. If the League of Villains strikes again like they did the other day, it could spell the end of All Might. What? Izuku said, leaning forward. His shaking hands set down his mug. Are you talking about being forced to retire, or do you fear they'll actually kill you? The villains correctly suspect that my time as the symbol of peace is almost over and will be looking to disturb its transference to the next symbol. Not today or tomorrow, but in the near future when All Might is removed from the active hero register. This means the point where you'll have to take up my mantle is closer than I wished. Toshinori paused to catch Izuku's eyes. Your transition into becoming the symbol of peace will have to begin at the approaching sports festival. The eyes of the world will be upon UA, and you will be among many who they'll be watching. Your status as my proto-copyright ga copyright is one of the best kept secret between the hero community and the government, and as such, they will be watching you closely. Nedzu recently informed me that it will include several other world leaders. Izuku flushed and swayed on the stool. What do you mean world leaders? I thought only the Prime Minister of Japan and his cabinet knew, right? Toshinori shook his head. One for all is unique enough that nearly every head of state is aware of it, whether knowing the every fact or just being in the know about a quirk that can be transferred between vessels. What many do know is that you have been selected to become my successor, and as it has been for several decades, much of the world looks to Japan when it comes to how quirks are handled in society, and that includes villains. Your goal at the sports festival is clear. Show the world who you are and let them begin to consider you as a candidate to become the next symbol of peace. That doesn't sound like a lot, Izuku said, introspective. But how? There's no interviews or anything like that. Think about how many famous pro-heroes have won the sports festival, Toshinori said. He smiled as Izuku shook his head, smiling back. If I win, people will be aware of my strength and my capacity to become a hero they can count on. Some may even see me as being strong enough to inherit your mantle, even with my youth. Izuku stood and bowed, filled with gratitude and respect. Thank you for your guidance, Toshinori-sensei. He straightened up and turned towards the door. I need to go eat before my afternoon classes, and some of my classmates will be curious about what you wanted to talk about. Before I go, are there any chances we'll meet for special training sessions between now and the sports festival? Toshinori nodded. We can return to the schedule we had before you started here, starting tonight if you wish. It's my goal to see you reach 30% by the time the sports festival starts in 2 weeks. As Class 1A packed their bags and gossiped, preparing to go home, a rumbling chatter came from beyond their door. They all stared at the door, curious and wary. Izuku had told them about the possibility they would be the talk of the school that morning, but they had only dealt with whispers and stares at lunchtime. Eyes glanced back and forth, waiting to see who would be willing to open the door and find out what was happening outside. With an annoyed snort and a sneer marring his face, Katsuki marched on the door and slid it open. A large crowd had gathered, phones and eyes focused on where he stood. Get out of my way, cannon fodder, Katsuki shouted, more waiting for people to move than push his way through the gathered crowd. If you're here to scope out the competition or ask us about fighting villains, go before I blast you. You won't learn shit from us. The crowd grumbled, yet nobody moved. It's true that we came to get a look, a tall boy near the back said. He made his way forward, slipping through the crowd like a seasoned pickpocket. You're modest, for a kid in the hero course. Although, I wonder what their opinion on threatening other students Issa. Katsuki clicked his tongue as Izuku and a few others lined up behind him. If this is it, you're disappointing, the boy said once in front of Katsuki. His indigo hair waved, wild and loose. Many of us in general studies and even some in the others applied for the hero course. There's more of us than you, and I want you to know that. Depending on how the sports festival pans out, there's a strong possibility one of us will transfer into the hero course. Of course, that means we will switch places with a student already in the hero course. Let me make it clear, this is a declaration of war. With that, the boy turned and walked away, just a hint of smugness on his face. The crowd soon followed and Izuku sighed. I need to find and thank Kendo soon. I was worried someone from her class try and use this incident to make this worse, or at the very least, agitate Kachan. Sounds like the sports festival is going to be more exciting than usual, Katsuki said, rubbing his hands. His smile would be concerning if Izuku thought it was about their classmates. If everyone's aiming for the top, then I'll just have to prove myself. Shame Midoriya kicked your ass, Ashido said, standing behind Tenya and Kirishima. Everyone will be shooting for him, although that general course kid will try going through you. Katsuki narrowed his eyes at Izuku. Remember, Deku, I'm the only person who'll be taking you down at the sports festival. Mark my words. Consider them marked, Kachan. While you try taking me down, I'll be fighting to show the world who All Might's successor is. Chapter 12. Toshinori watched two blurs bounce around a large, spacious chamber. Every so often they would collide, a flurry of punches and kicks exchanged and disengaged. Each exchange took place in a matter of blinks. Where I am overwhelming strength, he's becoming blistering speed. One for all is such a magnificent quirk. The smaller of the blurs was fluid, using columns and poles to guide his speed like a pinball in the hands of a professional. The taller blur, while moving faster, stopped for split seconds upon impact and then changed directions. I knew this would be the proper time to introduce them. Plus, he's challenged young Midoriya in a way that I couldn't without the risk of further weakening my own capacity to use one for all. There was one last collision and Toshinori's old mentor was tossed back, grumbling as he hit the ground. Izuku landed as close to where the collision had occurred as he could, chest heaving as he shifted his breathing, working to rein in his pounding heart and racing breathes. The squat, old man dressed in tights and a cape groaned as he stood. You picked a good apprentice, Toshinori, he said, rubbing his back. Fighting him is like the old days, back when you were young and new to one for all. Only difference is I'm an old geezer past my prime and the kid has a better sense for movement than you did then. I don't think I was that young when we first met, Gran Torino, Toshinori said as he descended from the rafters. The floating platforms were a new addition, but it made moving between the two levels easier and cleaned up the lower area once the stairs and ladders were removed. He smiled during the descent. Your training for the sports festival has been difficult, young Midoriya, yet you've always rose to meet the challenge. If you can beat Gran Torino, then I doubt there are many in your year that can beat you. Go out and show the world who will be the next symbol of peace. Hey All Might, Izuku said, breaking the man's train of thought. The flush of exertion in his cheeks had faded. How powerful am I now? I noticed that it's increased since the USJ attack but I wanted to know for certain. Where we wanted it, young Midoriya. 30%, Toshinori said. You are capable of safely controlling 30% of your current potential, which I suspect is finally increasing from what it was before you began at UA and it should increase with every year. Impressive, Gran Torino said, joining the conversation. However, such power won't help you if you get overconfident and underestimate your opponents. While you can safely recover from your fights at the festival, villains like the ones your class fought are more than willing to kill you and some will if they control the terms of engagement. Izuku blanched. You mean like our first fight last week when you, when I blindsided you so you were slammed into a pillar and nearly knocked unconscious. Exactly. Gran Torino turned to Toshinori. I say the boy is ready. The sports festival is tomorrow, so he should probably go home and get some rest. My bones need it after these past several days. I agree, Toshinori said. He puffed out his chest and expanded into his muscular form. Well, young Midoriya, tomorrow is the UA Sports Festival. The eyes of the world will be upon you, but I'm sure you know that. I'll make you proud, All Might, Izuku said, eyes shining. Among the many buildings on the campus of UA High School is the Sports Festival Stadiums, three giant structures built to house 200,000 spectators each. While the third-year competition was traditionally the most popular of the three, the USJ attack had drawn the public's attention to the first-year competition, and the greatest question on everyone's lips was, what quirks does Class A have? Because of the attack, security at the festival had increased to a level not seen since the first one after the Olympics had been cancelled. The most visible increase in security was the higher number of pro heroes in attendance, both those in costume and in civilian garb. If only we hadn't been hidden away all day, Izuku thought. He leaned back in his chair, watching his classmates attempt to keep the pressure away. Their prep room had been well stocked with simple furniture and water bottles, enough so a class double their size could be comfortable. Honestly, it would probably be better for us if we got a chance to at least speak with the press if we wanted to. I feel anxious this way, especially as I actually want to talk to them, especially about my connection with All Might. A lot of eyes are going to be on Todoroki and Kacchan, so maybe during a fight with them. Midoriya, Todoroki said. The heterochromatic boy stood in the room's center, eyes locked on his target. Even with your successes, I'm stronger and more capable than you. The room went quiet as they watched the encounter with an interest only drama could create. What do you mean? Izuku asked, standing. He's nearly as bad as that general studies kid from 2 weeks ago. It's simple. Even if All Might has his eye on you, more so than the relationship between teacher and student, there's one thing I know for certain. I will beat you. The room chilled and a few glanced at Todoroki's feet to see if he had used his quirk. Izuku ignored the others, especially the offhand comments about the half-cold half-hot quirk user's declaration. I accept your challenge, Todoroki, Izuku said. I'm not sure why you need to announce your intentions now, but don't think it'll be easy for you to beat me. If you only use the cold half of your quirk, you'll never beat me. I'm aware of who your father is, of what he can do and what you inherited from him. Izuku paused, watching the growing tension in Todoroki's face. There's more to his relationship with Endeavor than being an estranged son. If you're unwilling to use the full capacity of your quirk, you won't even be able to beat Kacchan, let alone me. If you say, Todoroki said, cold and annoyed, turning away. Izuku saw Katsuki's upturned sneer as he, too, turned away. Does he hate that name even more? I did beat him during training. I knocked him down a peg, not only in front of the class, but also in front of All Might. You just won't let that sit, will you? Soon enough, Class 1A was allowed out of their prep room and led to the northernmost gate onto the stadium's floor. They listened to Present Mike's welcoming speech until he said, and now the athletes. First is the class that fought off villains, this festival's favorites. From the heroic course, Class A. They emerged from the gate and stepped out onto the grass field. Grinning, Izuku waved at the crowd and soon enough several of his classmates quickly joined him. The crowd grew louder and some of their names could just be heard over the general roar. Genius, Midoriya, playing to the crowd. Iida shouted over the cheers. It's clear why we picked you to be our class president. Thanks, Iida, Izuku said. I'm waving for a different reason, but sure. Let's go with me courting the crowd. You're also waving at them. I think Kacchan is one of the few who isn't. He looked over his shoulder at Katsuki, who scoffed when their eyes locked and turned away. Just past him was a group of young fans, holding a banner as they chanted, Baku Go. Repeatedly. Following them is Heroic Course Class B, and then Classes C, D, and E from General Studies. Classes F, G, and H from the Support Course. And of course, the Business Courses. Present Mike worked through each group until over 200 students congregated on the stadium grounds. A stage rose from the ground and a female hero dressed in leather and latex emerged to thunderous applause. Thank you all for coming here today, for this year's sports festival. I am Midnight, the R-rated hero, and I will be in charge of today's activities. We're going to begin with the athlete's oath. We'll be having the highest scorer for the entrance exam come up here and perform it, she shouted. There were rumbles of discontent over her announcement. Shut up you lot, your student representative is Bakugo Katsuki of Class 1A. Katsuki pushed his way through the crowd and started up the stairs to the side of the stage. I can't believe he's up there, Kirishima said. He turned to Izuku. I would have thought you'd be up there, Midoriya. I heard about you saving Uraraka and taking down that giant robot as if you were All Might. Izuku nodded, filling away the comparison to All Might. True, but my score was removed after I got a last-minute recommendation. Aizawa-sensei told me about it when I asked him about the comments on my profile. Kirishima nodded as Katsuki got into position. The athlete's oath, he said, looking over the crowd, is that I'm going to beat all of you losers. Izuku sighed as the other classes shouted at Katsuki. He responded to their shouting with a rude gesture and declared they were all stepping stones on my path to the top. As he descended from the stage, Izuku frowned. Kachan would usually be smiling, basking in the angry comments being thrown at him. But he's stone-faced. That must have been as much for himself as it was for us. He wants to remind everyone of his goals. Well, now that's over, Midnight said, voice shaky. Let's get going. The first event is the qualifier where dreams are crushed and many of you will be sent home crying. This first year's event ISA this. She pointed at the large screen, which flashed, capture the flag. Capture the flag. I've never seen such an event watching the UA Sports Festival. It must be Newa. Midnight grinned at the confusion. As you're likely thinking, this is a new event designed for this year. As fun as obstacle courses are, the designers got bored with them. Plus, with so many powerful and interesting quirks this year, we devised something a little special. I'm sure you all remember the cityscapes from the entrance exam. Well, each has 7 flags tied to the front gates, waiting for someone to take down. Your goal is simple. Get to a flag and bring it back here. Just remember that because you were the first to grab it doesn't mean it can't be stolen. She pointed at the screen and a map of the campus appeared. 3 of the locations are near this stadium, while the other 3 are split between the 3 far corners of campus. Your success may just depend on which one you pick. A gate opened behind the stage. Good luck, and begin. The crowd pushed into each other as they raced for the open gate. Izuku let them pass him by, ignoring the few odd looks. Once everyone was clear, he dropped into a squat, sprung high above the crowd, landed on the stadium's roof, and leapt again. Todoroki grinned as with every movement, the distance between him and the rest of the field expanded. The ground before him was covered in ice and he raced past the gathered crowds watching them leave the stadium. He could hear moaning from behind, and shouting too, as he skated away. Father will never let me forget it if I actually thank him for allowing me taking those archaic ice skating classes. I'll just need to work on creating stable paths of ice above ground. He glanced back and grinned at the few who had made it past his obstacle. I would be disappointed if most of my class had been caught by my ice. Good, I want to fight them, to prove my strength. He scanned their faces and frowned. Where are you, Midoriya? Even at this point you should be behind me. As he turned forward, motion far away caught his eye. He followed it and watched a green and blue figure cross the sky, bouncing off the roof of UA's main building and continuing on his path towards a site Todoroki had decided to ignore. With a smile, he picked up his pace. Get back here, half and half. Bakugo shouted, his explosions drawing closer even with Todoroki's increased pace. I'll just have to fight you later, Midoriya. I'm looking forward to it. 7 navy blue flags were tied to the main gate of the cityscape Izuku landed in front of. Dust scattered as he landed. He glanced around as he inched towards the gate, watching for traps and surprises. His hand touched the nearest flag. He waited, counting to 10, and grinned when nothing happened. I was nervous for nothing. They must have assumed we'd be busy fighting among ourselves when we arrive or have to fight our way through an overwhelming wave of approaching students on our way back. Grinning, he untied the flag and turned so he could return to the stadium. Oh, I forgot a rule. Midnight's voice said from the nearby loudspeaker. Izuku froze, resting on the balls of his feet. The 0-point robots from the entrance exam have been stationed all across campus where none of our loyal audience members could be hurt. Now that someone has claimed a flag, they're active and with the upgrades provided by the excellent instructors for the support course, even more dangerous than before. He watched as massive robots rose from their resting places across campus. While he found it curious that they had been stationed away from the crowds enjoying the festival, he had assumed they were being kept away from the stadium and the main paths for the second event or even one of the events between lunch and the final event. Izuku stretched his arms and with a hard kick, returned to the sky with his flag in tow. Katsuki laughed, shooting past 2 zero-point robots that had Yaoyorozu and several other students pinned down. Todoroki was still skating on his ice, using it to slip past the robots without a care. Trust half and half to try and act cool. I'm going to blast that cold, smug look off his face before I remind Deku just who'll be the #1 hero. With a blast more like a fiery lance than the spherical blasts he preferred, Katsuki launched himself right at Todoroki, racing past him as near as he dared. The hybrid quirk user glanced over and blanched at the sight of the flying blonde who had suddenly caught up with him. They crashed together and tumbled. They rolled a few feet until Todoroki used his ice to disentangle the two and return to his feet. Unwilling to be outdone by another, Katsuki blasted after his opponent, on his feet before the other could put several feet between them. They barreled towards the stadium, ice and explosions trailing with every foot. Closer and closer they got, a flag wrapped around their arm, as the gate into the stadium appeared to grow larger and larger. As they entered, a loud thud like a baseball hitting a metal roof echoed through the long passage. The light grew bright and they blinked, finally reaching the floor of the stadium. Midnight's voice rose above the screaming crowd, announcing, and the first one back is Midoriya Izuku of Class A. Right behind him is classmates Bakugo Katsuki and Todoroki Shoto. The crowd roared as the green-haired boy lifted his flag into the air. Katsuki and Todoroki both stumbled as their quirk-enhanced race died. They stared at the only other person on the floor of the stadium, grinning as he basked in the crowd's cheer, until his eyes fell upon them. Damn you Deku, you better watch your back, because I'm gunning for you in the next round. Izuku watched as students poured into the stadium. As he suspected, the first 42 back, including himself, had a flag on their person and a tired grin on their face. The rest flooded in, guided into the stands to join the civilian and pro-hero audience. Probably best for the business courses. They'll be watching us closely in the second round so they can make bets and predictions on the third. Kachan will have favorable odds, along with Todoroki, several others, and myself. He scanned the remaining competitors. With the exception of the general studies kid that had declared war on his class and a girl with pink hair and several support items strapped all over her body, it was entirely Class A and B. As his more friendly classmates congratulated him, his eyes made contact with Kendu's. She grinned and winked at him, clearly remembering their playful words. They won't take it easy on us. Good, we have a reputation to uphold, being UA's top class of first years. Man, I wonder what's next, Kirishima said to Kaminari as they drifted nearby. Something team-related, probably. They do like those for the second round. At least we won't have to deal with those giant robots. Scared me worse than during the entrance exam when they came to life. Probably. They continued along as the remaining 42 were gathered to stand before Midnight's stage. Sorry about the delay, she said, stepping onto the stage. I had some things I needed to grab. It's time for the second event. The screen flashed. Cavalry battle. Not that original, Izuku thought. Pretty sure every school in the county does those for sports festivals. The cavalry battle is simple. Get into proper teams, anywhere from 2 to 4 members. Form your horses and make sure to consider what everyone's quirk is as you assemble your formation. The rules are the identical to regular cavalry battles, so make sure to target people's headbands. To make things more exciting and make your results from the last event more important, we've added a nice little twist. You have been assigned a point value based on when you returned. The last person will be worth 5 points, and then second to last will be worth 10 and so on. Only Midoriya Izuku, who returned first, has an exemption to these rules. You see, he will be worth 10 million points. Izuku grimaced as every eye in the stadium turned on him. Well, All Might, you wanted me to announce myself to the world. It looks like my hard work begins now. Chapter 13. 10 million points. The words mocked Izuku as he tried to think about anything other than the target slapped onto his back. Suddenly the attention upon him was undesirable. Fortunately, everyone then looked away, ready to plot and plan how to take his team's points. They'll fight to take my points, since it'll make for an easy win. It'll be tough to find people to join me, but it's doable. Hopefully the 3 I want are willing to join me and haven't been swept up by someone else. I might need to do more than simply ask. He scanned the mixing crowd as teams began to form. He first picked out Fumikage's hawkish gaze. Midoriya raised an eyebrow and in response, the crow-esque hero nodded and started for Izuku. 1 down, 2 to go. I think he actually wanted to work with me. Hopefully the others can be recruited as easily. He next spotted Kendo amidst half her class, all of them trying to get her to select them for her team. She sorted through her classmates, trying to pick who she may want when her eyes flicked up and met his. There was a pause as she looked at her classmates and then back to him. As he had with recruiting Fumikage, he raised an eyebrow and waited for her reaction. She looked away, thoughtful, and then spoke to her classmates. A look of amused betrayal crossed the few visible faces and Izuku was certain he now had 2 teammates. And for the last one, he watched Katsuki pick through several people from their class, including the person he wanted. As he watched them, Kendo and Fumikage joined him. "Excuse me while I get our last member," he said, distracted. Izuku cut through the thinning crowd and while Sato and Ashido argued about who deserved to be on Katsuki's team, he wrapped an arm around Ashido's shoulders and smiled. "Sato's all yours, Kachan. I'll see you on the field." He led a half-heartedly protesting acid user back to his other teammates. He dared a glance back at Katsuki and grinned at the sight of him fuming. "He's probably planning my funeral now. This better be worth it," Midoriya, Kendo said as Izuku and Ashido joined the other 2. "My entire class will likely be gunning for us. There's a lot of reasons, but the big ones are that many want to eliminate the strongest members of Class A, your million points, and now because I joined you." She nailed his bicep with a fast punch. "Don't make me regret joining you. It'll be worth it when we win," Izuku responded, rubbing his arm. "Very curious team you're putting together, Midoriya," Fumikage said. "I should guess you have assembled us with the mindset of crowd control." "That's the tactical purpose." Izuku raised an arm and clenched his fist. "I also want to humble Kachan and Todoroki before the next round. Plus, winning is always nice." "That it is," Ashido said, grinning. "Let's go, Midori." Fumikage nodded. "Let loose the crows of war." Kendo glanced at the others. "Let them doubt our strength." Kendo Itsuka couldn't remember the last time she had been nervous compared to the moment right before the cavalry battle began. "Even with the entrance exam, I had been gung-ho about it, confident I would get into UA. It didn't seem as unlikely as winning this battle. Yet staring down her own classmates made her spine go rigid and her hands clammy. The hands on her shoulders gave a squeeze, recognizing the tension inside, but they did little to calm her nerves. "Just start already," she thought, tempted to say it aloud. "Do I really have to do this barefoot?" Ashido asked. The pink girl was twice as gregarious as Kendo's entire class combined. 20 minutes of this will hurt my feet. You said your shoes would melt if overused. Let's stick to the plan, Mina," Izuku said, perched above them. They had agreed to use first names for the battle. "Every decision is meant to wring everything out of our quirks. If they get even a single advantage over us, it's over. We're the prize target and the first minutes will determine who gets the chance to continue on." She knew wrapped around his forehead was the bottle's holy grail, worth 1,375 points to whatever team had it once the battle ended. "It's an automatic win. We lose it and this becomes much more difficult. Beginning the second event. Prepare yourself for this brutal battle royal." It was Present Mike's voice and not Midnight's that roared through the stadium. "Start." Their team raced right. Ashido was on the edge facing the charging teams, acid flowing from the soles of her feet. With each step, the ground melted and the acid spread, creating a break line against the furthest of the charging opponents. That should force many teams to turn around and fight each other, according to plan. Tetsu and Monona will surely take advantage of the chaos, sneaking around as Class A fights each other. She scanned the growing crowd of teams, all of them turning away from Team Midoriya and attacking each other. All according to Midoriya's plan. Just 19 minutes to go. She scanned the battle, the land before them just visible from the corner of her eye. "Ah, there's Tetsu's Tima, but where's Monoma?" Siding with Class A. I expected better from you, class president. Monoma shouted as his team charged headfirst towards Kendo. His short blonde hair rippled as a breeze crossed the stadium. It's a shame that I have to take you out. No hard feelings, Kendo. Just trimming the opposition. Looks like our leaders are facing their first challenge in the team assembled under Class B's Monoma Nito. Present Mike's voice filled the stadium with his first comments since the battle's start. This should be a very interesting battle. Unlike the other teams, this one is a mix of the two heroic classes. At the front of Team Midoriya's horse is the president of Class B, Kendo Itsuka. It will be interesting to see how her addition allows the members of Class A to handle Monoma's team. Another thing Midoriya predicted, although Present Mike is doing his best to commentate on the battle. Straight ahead towards Monoma, Itsuka, Izuku said. We'll take him straight on. Mina, that's good on the acid line. Give your feet a break from producing acid. Kachan and Todoroki are too distracted by the other teams to give chase right now. Kendo frowned at the order, but followed through. You only explained your plans for fighting Bakugo and Todoroki, Midoriya. What strategy could you have for Monoma? His quirk is called Copycat. It allows him to steal the quirks of those he touches, but he can only use one at a time, was what I said when quizzed about the threats from my class. He'll be able to touch one of us if we're to get close enough to steal his headband in this scenario. She glanced over her shoulder. What are you thinking? There was a soft thump from above her head and the ground to Team Monoma's right exploded as if a mortal shell had struck. They stumbled as the ground exploded, but they straightened out and continued on their path. Less than 10 meters between us and it'll close quickly. She spotted a glimmer in Monoma's eyes as he focused on Izuku and a pit formed in her stomach. The collision was quick. Kendo unleashed a barrage of tire-sized fists while the team leaders grappled. They shoved off and Monoma laughed, sounding victorious. Oh, what a quirk you have, Midoriya, he said, clenching his right fist. It glowed with power. I can feel it pulse through me. I wonder if you're as powerful as All Might, for I feel like I could go head-to-head with him. Then use it, unless the copycat of Class B is more of a cowardly cat, Izuku said. The noises Ashido and Fumikage made signaled to Kendo that the green-haired boy taunting wasn't something he usually did. Have it your way, Monoma said, and his team closed the short distance once more. The copycat threw a punch coursing with Izuku's quirk. Izuku caught the punch and turned it aside. As the fist turned red and purple, dozens of bones breaking and thin spurts of blood popping out. Kendo looked away, face slack, as her classmate screamed. I guess I should have warned you, Izuku said, regretful. My quirk generates more power than I could control as a kid. It took me years to reach a point where I wasn't shattering my arm using my quirk, so it's not too surprising that it backfired on you like that. Recovery Girl should be able to patch you up. He reached over and swiped Monoma's headband, the boy not even trying to protest as it was removed. With a sigh, Kendo expanded a hand and swiped at her classmates, breaking their horse apart. Present Mike announced that Monoma's team was eliminated from the battle by their team. Medics raced out to take Monoma away, still holding tightly to his shattered hand. Izuku sighed, watching the four be led away. It would have been cleaner if he had gone for one of you, but my tremendous power was fortunately too much for him. Izuku sighed as he noticed the core battle around Katsuki and Todoroki shift, a few teams positioning themselves in between them and the larger grouping. We'll have to go and fight the others. I had hoped to try and fade from everyone's attention, but Present Mike was too loud to allow us the chance, and your class, Itsuka, will be looking to take me down. Let's start walking until a group gets close enough to fight. Team Midoriya approached the main battle step by step. The weaker teams not eliminated had been forced to the outside, all of them stalking, watching, waiting for an opportune moment as the few strong teams fought over the most valuable headbands. Shoji walked by, gleaming eyes peeking out from within his webbed arms. Izuku stared at them for a moment before gesturing towards one of the fights. Team Bakugo and Team Todoroki were engaged in a fierce duel, their quirks flowing past their teams. Each wall of ice Todoroki raised was cut down, either by Katsuki's explosions or Kirishima's hardened fists. Zero attempted to bind their feet with tape, but Tenya's speed kept Team Todoroki competitive and their headband outside of Katsuki's reach. We should work together, Izuku told Shoji. If we could get a couple more teams together, We could charge in and disrupt their fight. I have no interest in stealing their headbands, but you all do. I like your plan, a silky voice said from behind. They turned as a team carrying a boy with blue hair approached. He must be that kid from the General Studies who declared war on Class A, Kendo thought. It seems working with us is to his benefit, at least for now. Hopefully he doesn't turn on us once they've been attacked. The three carrying him looked dazed, and judging from how the hands on her shoulders stiffened, some were from Class A. The pink-haired girl with the goggles has to be from the support course, if only because of all the gear she has. She assumed. Izuku nodded from the boy's smile before he leaned down and whispered to Ashido, "Could you possibly create an acid to protect us from Kaminari's quirk?" "I may," she said, thinking. Either his electricity will slide off us like rain, or we'll take the hit 10 times worse. It's a risk, but it could work out. Let's do it. Just enough for us, though. I don't want to give any special advantages. A minute or so passed as the pink girl quickly produced a special acid paste, which they wiped onto their skin, hair, and clothes. Her skin tickled, as if covered in goose bumps as the liquid settled, more like lotion than the paste it had been. With a tap of a foot to her back, she broke into a run. Other groups, not including the two that had allied with Team Midoriya, had pulled back from the fierce battle, but upon seeing their movements, joined the charge. Within a blink, the duel was turned into a chaotic free-for-all. Team Todoroki summoned a blanket out of the stomach of the black-haired girl. Yaoyorozu Momo. Todoroki caught it and tossed it over their entire team, except for a smirking boy with yellow hair. The world seemed to still for a moment before crackling electricity flowed from the boy and rolled over every team. Kendo's muscles tensed as the electrical wave struck. Instead of shocking her as it did others, it flowed over her skin. It itched something fierce though, as if she had rolled down a long, grassy hill wearing only wool. A fiery explosion pulled her eyes from Team Todoroki. At some point in the chaos, a white cocoon had been created to surround, she would bet, Team Bakugo and insulate them from the electrical attack. Her suspicion was proven correct as the angry blonde and his team emerged. Bang, bang. With simple flicks, Izuku shattered the pause with 2 shots, each leaving a long scratch along the cheeks of Katsuki and Todoroki. They turned to Team Midoriya and a fire burned bright in their eyes. Izuku pressed his left foot into her ribs and she turned right, slipping between the other teams, who were beginning to recover from the paralyzing shock. Their formation was strained as they forced Teams Bakugo and Todoroki to push past the other teams if they wished to seize their headbands. Mina, Fumikage, cover our rear. Itsuka, get us close to the far side. We'll turn there and fight, away from everyone else. Are we taking them out? Ashido asked as the ground at her feet sizzled. Maybe, Izuku said. The third and final event is always a fighting tournament. The numbers are inconsistent, so it's possible even if we take their headbands, they might still continue on. We only have 7 minutes left, Fumikage said, and Kendo nearly stumbled. Has 13 minutes truly passed? It feels like we just began, not that we're close to finishing. That'll make them desperate, Izuku said. Both of them want to take me down by seizing my 10 million points. It's easier than fighting me head-on later. I know they don't appreciate me beating them back to the stadium during the first event. Kendo nodded and ignored the whispers between Ashido and Fumikage as they continued towards the far end of the stadium, near where they took down Monoma. One of the teams drew close, their pace faster than hers as the seconds counted down. They're almost on us, Ashido shouted. The sizzling that had followed them grew loud, promising violence. Turn to face them, Izuku said. Kendo spun in place while the two behind her followed her momentum, shuffling around. Team Todoroki was only a few feet away, pulled along by the powerful speed of their lead. The yellow-haired kid had somehow kept up, even with his dumb, blank expression. Yet it was the cold presence of their leader that made Kendo flinch and gulp. I heard that Endeavor's son was in our year, but I didn't expect to face him like this. His presence it's so much like his father's. I said I would beat you, Midoriya, Todoroki declared, his voice carrying across the stadium. Show me your strength so that I can overcome you and prove myself. Prove yourself to your father? Izuku asked. Is that why you won't use the power of your left side? Don't speak about matters you don't understand, Midoriya. This is between me and you, determining who's the strongest. Todoroki then turned and formed a thick ring of ice around them, blocking Team Bakugo just before they could attempt to interfere. Explosions begun to chip away at the ice, but Izuku would bet that it was built to resist the might of Katsuki Bakugo's quirk. If it's a battle of strength you want, then why confront me now? Izuku asked. You know as well as I the format of the sports festival. After this will be the tournament. He paused and Kendo guessed he was looking at the screen, displaying each team's point value. You're in second place. Your team is guaranteed a spot in the final event. What do you have to gain fighting me like this? I've lost to you once, Midoriya, Todoroki said, voice cold and still like a winter night. Traces of frost stuck to his cheek. I'll knock you from your pedestal before the festival is over, starting now. So be it, Izuku said. The two teams tense, waiting to see who would dare and make the first move. A moment passed before Todoroki tapped Tenya's left shoulder and in a blink, they had crossed the short distance between their teams. Kendo threw out her arms, hands expanding to catch Team Todoroki the instant she saw the tap. As her hand and the enemy team approached impact, steel flashed and a large needle pricked her fingers. Kendo swore as her hand shrunk, the stinging pain quickening her response. Team Todoroki took advantage of her defense failing and charged in close enough for Todoroki to reach out and grab Izuku's headband. They burst past in a blaze of speed, their leader holding onto a headband as they raced away. She turned to try and give chase when Izuku laughed. They got the wrong one, he said as his laugh faded. We still have my 10 million. Team Todoroki slowed as Todoroki looked at the headband he had grabbed. He sent a dirty glare at Izuku, but before either could turn and fight again, the ice wall was shattered with a roaring BOOOOOOOOOMM. Deku, Katsuki shouted as his team raced into the icy arena. A flashing light above the raging blonde caught Kendo's eye and she grinned. A minute left and counting. Team Bakugo charged, their leader screaming until he apparently decided to take things into his own hands and using his quirk, flew high into the air. I'm going to swat him like a fly, Kendo mumbled to herself, letting her right hand expand as Katsuki approached. The instant she was able to pick out his red irises from the white surrounding them, she flicked her large hand up and as she claimed, swatted him out of the sky like a fly. His team raced to catch him and did so, thanks to a last-second explosion from their leader. I'll get you for that, man hands. Katsuki shouted as Present Mike's booming voice began to count down. I'm going to smack him again for that nickname. 10, 9, 8. Present Mike began the countdown as Team Bakugo and Team Todoroki moved into position for a desperate final charge against Team Midoriya. 7, 6. Team Todoroki burst ahead thanks to Tenya's quirk. 5, 4, 3. Team Bakugo caught up with their rivals as they reached the last few feet of the charge. Kendo expanded her fists to the size of small trucks, blocking their charges at the final moment. 2, 1, 0. The three teams stopped as Present Mike declared the end of the battle and rattled off the top teams. In first place, Team Midoriya. Second place goes to Team Bakugo. Third place is Team Todoroki. And in fourth place is Team Shinso. While Kendo grinned, proud they had held tightly to their first place position, a worrisome thought nudged up from the back of her mind. Who's Shinso? Chapter 14. Izuku joined the other 15 students that had successfully completed the second event. He was relieved it was over. The pressure of being the primary target of the other teams had been stressful, even if winning had been worth the effort. Although, all we had to do was prevent the others from stealing our headband. As the screens displayed highlights for those who had focused on a single group or missed some of the crazier actions, he noticed that the majority of scenes featuring his team had been from moments where his decisions had been the factor leading to victory in the shown moments. I definitely made the correct choice, selecting my team. His eyes wandered across the others. Who will I have to fight? I know nearly everyone, so there shouldn't be any big surprises. We'll be taking a break for lunch, Midnight announced, pacing across her stage. We'll see you back here in an hour to announce the details of the final tournament before breaking into the lighter festivities. Enjoy yourselves. As Izuku turned to head for the food stands outside the stadium, a cool hand caught his shoulder and pulled at his attention. Todoroki stood next to him, an odd look on his face. I want to speak with you, Midoriya. In private would be best. Sure, Izuku responded, surprised by the request. I wonder what he wants. Lead the way. They entered a nearby passage and emerged outside the stadium. Todoroki turned left and led Izuku to a passageway for support staff coming and going from the stadium. A moment passed before he spoke. I'm sure you're wondering why I brought you out here to talk. Trust me when I say it's important, especially since I have some questions for you. That was going to be my question, Izuku said. You clearly have something else to say to me, beyond the declaration from earlier. Will you ask your questions first, or is there something else you need to tell me first? The questions will follow what I have to say. He snorted and shook his head. It's easy to forget how perceptive you can be, Midoriya. Todoroki raised his left arm and stared at it, as if the limb had somehow offended him and he wasn't sure why. There was a moment where I felt tempted to use my left side. I nearly broke the pledge I made long ago. He clenched his left fist and then he locked eyes with Izuku. I can see what's in front of me, Midoriya. The others might not realize it, but I felt the pressure your quirk creates. That story you told us on the way to the USJ was sprinkled with half-truths and deflections. Izuku frowned. Does he know? I know he's Endeavor's son, so he would technically have a bone to pick with All Might and in part, his successor. Plus, I know his father is among the few pro-heroes who don't teach at UA aware of my quirk, if only because he's number 2. What's your point, Todoroki? It's simple, really. Are you All Might's illegitimate child? Bakugo told me when I asked him that your father has been absent since before his quirk appeared and that nobody knows what became of him. Perhaps he left after discovering you weren't his childa. A long moment passed as Izuku processed what he had been told, replaying the 4 sentences over and over. Hey, he can't be serious. I can't believe that he would say such a thing. Sure, it's better than him finding out the truth, but it disregards what I said and that story has more truth than fantasy. I wonder how he came to that conclusion. What would make you think that? I mean, if I was his child I would deny it, especially to Endeavor's son, but it's such an absurd question that I'm honestly shocked. There was a dozen other things I would have expected before that. I know you're hiding the truth surrounding your quirk and I will figure out what the truth is, if only to silence my father, Todoroki said, a slight temper in his voice. You know who he is. Endeavor, the number 2 hero in Japan and one of the top 10 globally. If you're connected to All Might like I suspect, then that's reason enough to crush you before the cameras. You never would guess, but I was born to ensure my father's legacy and surpass the number 1 hero. Todoroki paused and glanced outside, thoughtful and serious. There is only one thing my father concerns himself with, growing stronger. He has gone all out in becoming a great hero. He's gone so far that All Might is little more than a roadblock towards achieving his goals. Even so, he will only win when All Might retires. He won't admit it, but we all know it's true. Why are you telling me this, Todoroki? Izuku asked, stuck between confused and nervous. He had a bad feeling about the direction the conversation was moving in, but his natural curiosity couldn't help but want the boy to continue speaking. Is this still about my relationship with All Might, or are we discussing your father now? In part, Todoroki admitted. Are you familiar with quirk marriages? At Izuku's uncertain nod, he continued. They became an issue during the early generations after quirks became widespread. Strong individuals would select a partner and coerce them into marriage for the purpose of breeding a child with either a more powerful version of their quirk or with a hybrid quirk that would make their child stand above their future peers. This is how my father came to marry my mother, hoping to bind his quirk to hers within a child. And me, I'm that child, the one born with both of their quirks. You could never understand how it is, being used for a single purpose, for a goal that isn't mine. I hate it. I'm a tool for my father, to build a lasting legacy that benefits only him. From the moment my quirk manifested, my training begun. It was harsh and brutal, designed not for a child, but one for the most promising interns in a top hero's office. My mother tried to stop him, but she wasn't even considered a tool in his mind, for she had already served her purpose. I remember what happened when I first showed her my fire, the power I got from him. She hates that power more than me, and when she saw me using it, she threw scalding water on the left side of my face, the side I inherited from my father. She couldn't stand the sight of that side of my face. I remember her words right before she threw that water so clearly it haunts me to this day. A terrible shudder froze Izuku stiff, as Todoroki grew louder and angrier. I won't use my left side against you, no matter your connection to All Might. It's my way of getting vengeance against my father, for what he's done to me and my mother and all my siblings that failed to be the tool he wanted. When I rise to the top without using it, I will have won, and denied him everything. Todoroki paused and with a sigh, turned away. The questions can wait until after I beat you. We both know for me to reach the top I will have to fight through you, Midoriya. Izuku watched Todoroki walk away, shocked. With a backstory like that, he could be an anime protagonist. The tragedy, the complex involving his father. It's so weird to think a pro-hero would dare such a thing. He followed Todoroki out of the tunnel and said, more to himself, I know you want to defeat me with only your ice abilities, Todoroki. Just don't think you can really beat me without using the full power of your quirk. The 16 students gathered once more before the stage where Midnight stood, anxious as they waited for the coming announcement. While the final tournament was tradition, the specifics varied from year to year. Plus, there were glances at Shinso, whose quirk was mostly a secret and displayed a menacing presence towards the others. Now that we're all here, Midnight finally said, it's time to present the final event. The screen rolled through a dozen possibilities before settling on 1v1 tournament. I'm certain none of you need an explanation for how this will play out. Here are your matchups. I hope you're prepared. Izuku was uncertain what to make of him being in the first match. The chart was simple enough. Match 1, Midoriya Izuku vs Uraraka Ochako. Match 2, Todoroki Shoto vs Sato Rikido. Match 3, Hiroshima Eijiro vs Ojiro Mashirao. Match 4, Ashido Mina vs Kaminari Denki. Match 5, Yaoyorozu Momo vs Kendo Utsuka. Match 6, Hatsume Mei vs Shiro Honta. Match 7, Tokiyami Fumikage vs Iida Tenya. Match 8, Bakugo Katsuki vs Shinso Hitoshi. Tough matchup, Kendo asked. She flicked her ponytail towards the female members of Class 1A. You know why they're wearing cheerleading costumes. Confused, Izuku looked over at the girls in his class. All of them, whether in the tournament or off to the side, were dressed in orange and red cheerleader outfits, complete with "UA" across their chests. This was Mineta's doing, no doubt about that. I can't believe I'm impressed. I wish he would put that much effort into being a proper hero, though. Practical joke, Izuku said. We have a serious pervert in our class. His quirk is rather useful, but he definitely needs to adjust his personality. I'll have to ask him how he got Yaoyorozu to go through with it. She seems to be the most immune to his plots, though a couple have described her as being shockingly naïve about some topics, so maybe she was just sheltered. Kendo nodded, the hint of a smirk playing on her face. What can you tell me about Yaoyorozu? I'm facing her in the first round and she got to see my quirk during the cavalry battle. Keeping my lips sealed, Izuku said. You said nothing about most of your classmates during the cavalry battle. Plus, our classes are still competing, even if you're the only one left. And other than Monoma, none of them were the type of threat you would need to know about beforehand, Kendo responded, shrugging. You can at least give me a hint. Izuku frowned and looked over at Momo. I still don't know where they got those uniforms from unless he grinned and said, I would bet that she made those uniforms. That has to be part of how she got roped into that mess. Before Kendo could press for more details, Midnight interrupted them. Unless there are any questions or complaints about the final event A. Ojiro raised his arm, interrupting Midnight's speech. I want to drop out. The crowd burst into shouts, questioning the tailed boy's decision. Izuku watched, curious, as he continued. I don't remember what happened during most of the cavalry battle. There's some of the end I remember, but not the beginning. I don't feel comfortable continuing on when the only reason I'm here is because of his quirk. Eyes turned to Shinso, who smiled at the attention. I know how large of an opportunity this is and many will say I'm stupid throwing it away, Ojiro said. However, everyone else made it into this final round using their own strength. I don't know how I reached this point of the festival and my pride and honor won't allow me to continue forward. Anyone else? Midnight asked, looking at the other two members of Team Shinso. They both shook their heads, strong and serious. Then we'll have a member of Team Tetsu replace Ojiro Mashirao. The display flashed to reflect the change as the third match was updated to Kirishima Eijiro vs Tetsu. Present Mike's amplified voice cut through the chatter. With that, the matchups are official. Good luck to all of our competitors as we take a break for the lighter festivities. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.